Here we go.
Live from the Hollywood foothills of North Carolina, welcome to episode 65 of the Confirmed Epic Podcast, the official podcast of theepicreview.com, and proudly presented by Geeks Worldwide Radio Network, which you can find at dgww.com. I, of course, am one of your hosts, the real Brad Bell, and joining me today is the one, the only, Andrew Stokes, also known as
Andrew Stokes.
So we have a slam-packed episode today. Very special episode. There's a lot of news. There's some epic news. There's some sad news. You and I recorded not too long ago, so we're not going to do the checking out segment this week. We're going to skip over that because this is kind of a double feature episode. We're going to do the Icons of Summer Cinema Showdown series in the 1970s.
Yep.
And then at the end of the episode, we're going to dive into a spoiler-filled review. We'll do a non-spoiler section as well of The Mummy, directed by Alex Kurtzman, which hit theaters this past Friday, June 9th.
I gotta say, since I've seen The Mummy, it really awoke something within me. I've been checking out a lot of ancient Egyptian history and stuff. So I hope you don't mind. I actually invited an Egyptologist friend of mine here for the podcast. He should be here any moment.
Who might that be?
Oh, hold on a second. It's actually a Swedish friend of mine. Hold on a second. Here he is. So this is my friend.
Hello.
He's Swedish. He also grew.
Yeah.
He has a Swedish accent, but he actually grew up in Jamaica. So he sounds kind of
Ja man.
Yeah.
I am a Egyptologist. Yeah.
Everett Harn, thank you for joining the podcast from Sweden.
Just watched The Mummy with Tom Cruise.
It's Tom Hardy, actually.
Tom Hardy.
No, it's Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise. Yeah, this is a Tom Hardy.
He doesn't know who these American actors.
Not sure. I'm more familiar with Dirk Režvanik
Yeah.
and Dirks Lorshakov.
They sound more like Russian names.
Okay, I did not know that I was coming in here to be, how do you say, belittled?
Well, you weren't supposed to be on the podcast. We were just.
I think you have a future in government.
I found this movie was very accurate to Egyptology.
It seemed accurate. It seemed very
Okay, so we have an ancient relic from our own past.
An ancient relic. Wow.
Not by age, just being based on how long it's been since he's been on the podcast.
That's an ageist comment.
And he walked in the room and I started seeing visions of a desert filled with action figures and He-Man references.
Jerry Reed, also known as
Barbecue 17. What's up, everybody?
Back in the podcast.
And that makes sense because I surprised y'all at the Mummy yesterday.
You did.
Didn't know I was coming. I snuck in the theater and sat behind y'all.
us creepily.
That was really
touching
odd,
our
but
shoulders.
it was an exciting surprise.
Yeah.
I have to say that it is a great day. Hell, it's an epic day when the three of us can sit down in the same room and podcast together.
Three amigos, people call us.
Because this is how it all started right here, was with the three of us. Then Andrew went away, then it was Jerry and I, then I went away. Anyway, when I published the book, The Written History of the Epic Review, and we make the documentary, we'll detail all that.
It's going to be a lot of repetitive chapters. And then I left, and then I came back.
And then I came back, and we had a...
And then later the next day I came back.
And then I sold all my toys.
And then Jerry launched a multi-million-dollar toy podcast and website.
It has a spin-off autobiography.
Of course, Jerry of actionfigurebarbecue.com, where he has really been kicking ass over there, serving up reviews.
Hot and fresh daily.
I love that.
Not daily, but...
Life takes over sometimes.
Life finds a way.
Yes. So, let's go ahead and get into the episode, guys. Let's start out with epic news, and we're going to start out with some very sad epic news today. At the age of 88, literally probably 2 hours before we came on the air, the state of Adam West announced that he had passed away Friday evening after losing his battle with leukemia. It was a very private battle. He was diagnosed, from my understanding, Jerry and Andrew, not too long ago.
They said it was very short.
Yeah, they said it was a very short battle, unfortunately. Of course, Adam West, obviously most well known for being Batman next to Burt Ward's Robin in the 1966 Batman TV show. That was the first big on-screen appearance of that character. I know there had been previous ones, but this was the first kind of universally well-received and viewed version of Batman.
I think we could argue that if it weren't for that Batman series and the folks behind it, Batman would not be the cultural phenomenon that the Batman property is today.
It was one of my first experiences with Batman, even obviously not growing up during that era, but just watching it on TV and reruns.
I think it made Batman recognizable far outside the realms of just comic books.
Yeah.
So.
And it was odd. We're going to talk mainly about his Batman stuff, but of his career as a whole, he always kind of thought that role as that campy Bruce Wayne / Batman hurt him a little bit, because later on it kept him maybe from getting some bigger roles in Hollywood, which was unfortunate because he is a very talented actor. So let's talk about Adam West Batman. Andrew just mentioned that it was one of his first experiences. It was my first experience. So when I wrote up this blog post today at theepicreview.com, it really hit home with me. It really made me... I didn't tear up, which is easy for me to do, as you guys know. I almost teared up, and it wasn't just because of the passing of Adam West. And I think there's going to be a lot of stories that fans share on podcasts and blogs and whatnot like this over the past few days. But it took me back to my childhood, sitting there, especially in the summers. My parents both worked. My grandparents pretty much raised us in the summer. And my grandfather and I watching those reruns and just sitting on his lap at 4, 5, 6 years old, hearing that theme music and that epic animated opening, and my grandfather laugh and really, show me Batman for the first time. And just like whether it was the Carolina Panthers or Star Wars, Batman was a thing that we shared a mutual love for. From that moment till up to when my grandfather died in December 2015. It was New Year's Eve 2015. Because he went and saw The Dark Knight, Dark Knight Rises. I mean, we watched all these Batman films together. He collected Batman comics as a kid. I wish he had had them. I'd be in a bigger house right now. We may have a professional podcasting studio right now.
You would have left us behind, Brad.
I would have never left you guys behind.
You would have sold all the Batman comics long ago.
I remember, and I don't want to get too emotional and drag us down, but as I visited with my grandfather...
Andrew did bring tissues.
Thank you. The day before he died, or the evening before he passed away, I was just kind of... He knew what was going on, but he wasn't able to respond because he was so weak. And I was sharing all these stories, and I was talking to him about Batman, and he was acknowledging... He remembered seeing The Dark Knight, and he came over... Dark Knight Rises was 2012. He came over Christmas 2012 to my house, because he was getting to the point where he couldn't get out to the theater, and we watched that at my house while my family prepared like Christmas dinner. So this really hit home with me, and I think there's, like I said earlier, this is people's first Batman, especially people older than us who watched it originally. Jerry, what do you think, because you're a huge fan of this show, as am I, what do you think made this representation, besides being first, of course, the first big one, made this so iconic?
I think that Adam West's Batman and the show as a whole really tried to tap into the culture of the 60s in a very positive way. I mean, it was very hip, it was very modern. There was an intention to bring in lots of character actors and comedians and people who are well known. So even if you weren't into superheroes, which were still largely viewed as just kids, I mean that's still a prejudice, a stigma that's there sometimes. But I mean, folks were watching this because kind of some of the best actors and actresses of the day were showing up on this show. It was very, I would almost compare, not tonally, but I would compare it to how the Marvel Studios films are now. That they are reaching out a wider audience than you typically think of as the demographic by pulling in, big name actors, big name actresses, and just being in touch with the culture at the moment. And Batman was doing that at that time, and so it was something that was bigger, that it had enough jokes and self-awareness that a kid could watch it and be amused by it, and as an adult you can watch it and realize that how silly it is. I mean, it really pokes fun at itself.
And it is silly. I got the Blu-rays.
Yeah.
My in-laws bought them for me. Well, I said, what do you want on Amazon? And I told them I wanted the box set of the 66 show. And I watched a couple. Man, it looks beautiful, by the way.
Yeah.
They really did a great
Still
job.
a colorful, gorgeous show to look at.
But it is a silly show.
It is. And it realizes that it's a silly show.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure there was a lot of entertainment at that time that had that level of self-awareness as well, where you get the point, everybody is in on the joke as well, about how funny and silly it is sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And Batman and Robin, of course, Burt Ward Robin, their interaction with the villains, especially the core four of, Caesar Romero, Joker, and Burgess Meredith, Penguin. Then you had the multiple Catwomans, right? You had Julie Newmar,
Eartha Kitt.
Wasn't there one other one as well who was in the Lee Merriweather?
Lee Merriweather's the third Catwoman.
Wow, three Catwomans on that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, my all-time favorite Riddler, still to this day, the Frank Gorshin Riddler.
Later, John Astin.
Yeah. I forgot about that. I forgot that there was two Riddlers, so you mentioned that.
A lot of folks who changed. There were two Mr. Freezes. They changed out characters a lot on that show.
That movie really set a precedent for those 90s Batman movies. And we'll lay 80, 89 with and I don't mean the tone, obviously.
I think you can bring up that the tone of those movies, that there have been some fans who have looked back and had a hard time accepting that show, seeing as it took Batman in one direction, where the comics were trying to take Batman in another direction later on. I hope at this point that at least for the 60 series, that most fans are able to accept two visions of Batman. I mean, we can have the comic and the film versions that are significantly darker, and then you can go enjoy something like the Batman Lego movie, where it's very much this loving parody, kind of self-awareness about how silly sometimes some of the Batman concepts are.
I remember some backlash against Batman the Brave and the Bold when it came out, because it was kind of like a lighter
It's a
take
big
on
jump.
Yeah.
Well, and that was coming out when the Nolan movies were on screen, too. It was just such a dichotomy.
Had a musical episode with the Music Master.
Neil Patrick Harris,
Neil
right?
Patrick Harris, yeah.
But it is indeed sad news. He will be missed. It's not that often that celebrity deaths really hit home with me. I'm dreading the Stan Lee as he gets older. Like I think about this on a monthly basis.
I'm sure he appreciates that.
Well, Marvel must think about it too. They had him film all those cameos at one time. To me, Jerry, this is kind of similar to how, and it was one of the best articles ever written. I don't know what that's saying. Ever written on the epicreview.com. But it was a fantastic article you wrote when Harold Ramis passed away. And still, to this day, is one of the most read articles, and still up at that site if you want to search Harold Ramis. That hits you. I know that the Ghostbusters really resonate with you. And while I don't know if I consider Adam West my Batman, because I think your Batman is, when you were a child, what was kind of in the culture at the time, the pop culture. For me, it's Keaton. I consider Michael Keaton my Batman, not even Christian Bale. And there is no Keaton, there is no Kilmer. Well, maybe there's a Clooney. I'm just joking. There is no Bale, no Affleck Batman, perhaps, if West didn't put Batman on the map. So rest in peace. I hope he's somewhere talking to my grandfather. So that's what I like to think. But that was heavy-handed, but it needed to be discussed. So great conversation, guys.
Thank you.
Let's go ahead and move on to some happier news, which is the Black Panther trailer, guys. It just released last night. Kind of caught everybody off guard.
Was it was it released as like during like one of the finals games or something? Like, why was it released like in the middle of the night?
Maybe it was. Of course, the finals are on ABC. ABC's owned by Disney.
Right. Okay.
I saw it
would
yesterday
make
afternoon.
sense. Really? I didn't
After
see it
the
till
movie.
like
Well,
11
right after we got out of the
o'clock at
movie.
night. Okay. All right. So it hit before that basketball came.
Did you even mention what movie we're going to review today?
Yeah.
Yeah, we mentioned it in the open. The Mummy.
Oh, The Mummy. I forgot I saw it yesterday because it was so forgettable that after going home and watching the Black Panther trailer, which was incredible, I forgot about The Mummy.
Wow.
Speaking of that trailer, let's go ahead and get into our discussion on that now.
Tell me something. What do you know about Wakanda? It's a third world country. Textiles, shepherds, cool outfits, all front. Explorers have searched for it. Called it El Dorado. They looked for it in South America. But it was in Africa the whole time. I'm the only one who's seen it. And made it out alive. I can see you. The world is changing. Soon, there will only be the conquered and the conquerors.
Step into the spotlight.
You are a good man
Step into the spotlight.
with a good heart. And it's hard for a good man to be a king.
So, Andrew Stokes, what did you think of this trailer? And I think we all agree that we like it. What made it stand out to you?
I haven't seen it yet. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I mean, it's obviously it is somewhat different from kind of what you expect out of them. Not necessarily what you expected, but from what we've seen, especially from other origin films. So this is kind of an origin film light to a degree because Black Panther, like Spider-Man, was introduced in Civil War. Yeah. So we've kind of had an introduction to this character a little bit. I think in your write-up, or maybe just talking to you about the trailer, you mentioned that you felt it was kind of Guardians-like. It kind of gave you a Guardians of the Galaxy vibe.
As far as the different type of tone,
it has a very different setting to it, which is very different than most other superhero movies.
Right.
So many other superhero movies, you could almost, you could almost cookie cutter the trailer. Cities. You know, cities,
earthbound,
and crime and stuff like this, and this takes place in such a different environment,
even though it's on Earth.
Yeah, and it looks, refreshing.
I didn't necessarily get the Guardians vibe though, personally.
I meant that just as a different.
I thought the costuming was very unique too. I mean,
visually, it definitely separates
giving
itself.
Its own,
but like tone-wise, it definitely seems not quite like Thor Ragnarok or these Guardians movies, but tonally it seems more in step with the other kind of mainstream Marvel films.
When I wrote about it on the site, 3 films came to mind, and these are 3 films that you really like, Jerry.
Okay.
I want to see what you think. Predator.
Because he's up in a tree.
Yeah.
Because
you see like hunters too.
Yeah, there's
guns.
Well, I mean that is definitely some of the Black Panther tone there. Is more into the lone predator.
Sneaky,
very Batman-ish, but taken in a jungle setting versus an urban setting.
Yeah, Total Recall just based on some of the scenery. The scenery to me.
Like spaceships?
I guess. I have no clue where you're getting that one from, buddy.
I just thought the color palette was similar to Total Recall.
To the original Total Recall?
Yeah, with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
It took place on Mars?
Maybe?
Okay.
I kind of almost.
Is Black Panther gonna pull like a giant red orb out of his nose? I don't know.
I hope so.
We'll see.
Fifth Element. with the costume.
The costuming, very Fifth Element. Yeah, that has a very unique style to it. And I could see that this is very different and has its own visual style. I like that. Okay.
What's so interesting here is that Marvel, Guardians was different. It was a hit. And we used to talk about how everything with Marvel was cookie cutter.
Right.
Remember, they got rid of the Ant-Man director. I'm blanking.
Edgar Wright.
Edgar Wright, because it was too much of an Edgar Wright film
Right.
than it was a Marvel Studios film. But when Guardians was the success that it was with James Gunn, all of a sudden you see not just Guardians 2, but the Thor Ragnarok kind of looks out there. This looks very different. And I think that it's awesome that to keep this universe refreshing, that they're not only allowing directors to kind of have more of an input, but allowing them to take risk that early in the MCU they might not would have made because they're trying to establish the universe.
I just liked going back on when I was doing a review of some of the Marvel Legends figures for Guardians 2, and I was going back and looking at all the people who wrote that, like, oh, Guardians of the Galaxy is going to be the movie where Marvel loses it.
That was Evan who was saying that.
No, there were lots of people saying that. But then I saw it with Ant-Man, and I saw all these things, and it just was really funny.
Strange got
going back and looking at everybody talking about every movie Marvel Legends going to lose it. Like, I was waiting for people to say, oh, Marvel Legends going to lose it this time. This looks awesome. I'm very excited for this.
This is definitely not going to be the movie where Marvel loses.
That's a great teaser.
The music,
the music is very cool.
It has some different. We talked about the tone, the color palette. We saw Black Panther in Civil War, like you guys said, and he was introduced. But that was one of the best parts of that movie, and we only got a small sample size of that.
He's in there a little more than like Spider-Man was. But
yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite lines and favorite moments in all the MCU is at the end when Baron Zemo has brought Captain America and Bucky and Iron Man, and they're fighting it out, and he's about to kill himself, I guess, out there on that cliff. And Black Panther, you just see him lurk up. You've let the vengeance consume you. God, it was so good. And just that back and forth when he's talking about Segovia and stuff. So to see that for an hour and 40 minutes or however long this is going to be.
Oh, come on. Over 2 hours. We know that.
Okay, maybe.
All superhero movies have to be at least 2 hours long.
Unlike The Mummy, which was an hour and 40 minutes.
It's breezy.
Yeah.
Was that short?
Yeah, it was like...
How longer? No,
the sand blew right by me in the hourglasses with that film.
I think this trailer looks different enough to be exciting, but not so different as to be off-putting to like a general audience who would see this.
Let's talk about the director real quick. Ryan Coogler directed Creed. Mm-hmm. You borrowed my copy of Creed, didn't you?
No, I'm just kidding. I don't think so. I think I watched it digitally. I don't know, maybe. I've seen the movie.
No, that was my parents that borrowed it. Did you see Creed?
I have not seen Creed.
As much as you love Rocky,
I know.
You're borrowing it. I have it.
Okay, let me borrow it, please.
Oh my God, it is an epic film. And he also directed one of my favorite movies. I'm trying to think of what year it was.
I want to say it's 2013 or 2014.
Fruitvale Station. About the death of Oscar. I can't remember his last name. I think it was Lanning or Lanson or something like that. At the hands of a police officer.
That was Michael B. Jordan in there, right?
Yeah, Michael B.
He's
Jordan.
in Creed and he's in Black Panther as well. So.
Yeah, they have a working relationship. Although it'll be interesting to see how big of a role Michael B. Jordan has in this film. We see him; he's in cuffs. Looks like he's a villain type character. I think that's kind of been established by Coogler. But they got Coogler on the rise. He wasn't as established as somebody like an Edgar Wright when they went after him.
Joss Whedon.
They're catching these directors at the right time because James Gunn, a known commodity with a Slither and a Super, which we love that movie.
I love that movie. Shut Up, Crime.
They catch these on the way up before they reach Nolan-esque. My favorite level.
Your favorite word, Nolan-esque.
Nolan-esque.
This dinner is very Nolan-esque. Yeah. Your wife's like, what's that mean?
So we can't wait for this film. It comes out February 2017, February 16th, 2018.
I got Valentine's Day plans now.
That's crazy. I mean, have they released a February movie so far?
No, they haven't.
They really just put them out whenever. It's like, we're a Marvel film.
We're a Marvel
film.
film.
See it.
It's going to be the biggest February opening of all time, which
Probably.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the 50 Shades movie hold that honor right now.
The second one, the newest one?
I think the
Darker,
newest
whatever?
one, yeah, which my wife saw and gave me a personal review of. We won't talk about that. It's not what you think, believe me.
All right, I did that.
She just
Oh,
she just told me about the film. All right. This is what happens when you get the original Epic Review team back together. Of course, Andrew Stokes was a part of that original trio that is here today, and he wants to bring us some of his specialties, some video game news. Tell us what's going on.
Well, I don't know too much what's going on because honestly, we were driving over here for most of the first press conference. But E3, as of the time of this recording, just kind of kicked off today. As far as like the conferences, before the actual show opens up, and I guess EA was the first ones up. So, like I said, I didn't get to see too much. BioWare has a new game coming out. I'll have to look up the name real quick.
Greg Miller was tweeting,
Yeah.
"Give me NCAA football 18." I'm guessing that was a joke. Have you heard anything about NCAA 18?
No, I didn't see anything about it when I was there.
Because there was that whole controversy with the college athletes, like it's clearly Cam Newton or Tim Tebow.
I think there's been like rumors that it's coming back. Like they want to bring that
License.
franchise back. I mean, it was a very big one for them. It was a very popular one, and some people enjoyed that more than Madden.
Yeah.
BioWare has a new game called Anthem coming out. I don't really know too much about it, but they did show some gameplay for a game called A Way Out, which is from the developers of Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. I think is.
That was a good game.
I haven't actually gotten to play that. It's one of those ones I wanted to. Never got. I think I owned it. I think it was like a free game with gold one time, so I think I actually owned it.
I reviewed it on the Epic Review.
Did you? Okay.
I am pretty confident it's like the only video game I've ever reviewed on there.
Other than that, I mean, it's just kind of what you expect. FIFA, Madden, Need for Speed, stuff like that. I think the Madden trailer kind of looked cool, though, and maybe FIFA, I didn't get to see too much of that, but Madden looks like, they always kind of do some sort of like career mode or something, right, where you can like maybe create a character. Excuse me. But it looks like this
It's
year...
part of the franchise mode now.
Right.
You can just do, be a coach, be a GM, you can be the owner, or you can be the a superstar. So basically, whatever. Let's say you're quarterback, it sims all the defensive stuff.
Okay. Well, this one looked like it was like a legit story. They had, I forget the actor's name, but it was clearly like, this one actor that I've seen in a few things, and he was, I don't know, some sort of
Michael
father
B.
figure.
Jordan?
No.
Oh.
But it looked
It's
like
gonna suck,
maybe you
man.
play like a high school player or something. It looks like, I'm not even sure what exactly the gameplay
Well,
was.
is this in Madden?
Yeah, this was Matt.
Because FIFA did the same thing last year.
Yeah,
It's
FIFA
like-
looked like they were doing something like that again this year.
I mean, that thing was so universally well received. It's
This-
not a surprise
yeah.
that this is.
I mean, this is like a very story. Like this is like story mode story.
Explain this to me how this is going to work.
I have
know
no idea. Because again, I don't even know. Like having watched that part, I was like, "What's the gameplay? Are you playing like the high school game?"
So he's coming out of high school, or are you just going to skip his college years? Or is this
See, I'm
somebody
not
who's like a walk-on at training
I'm
camp?
honestly
or-
not sure. I didn't get to hear what was going on too well.
Well, crap. If this is that good, I may have to buy an Xbox Scorpio.
I mean, like it looked like portions. He's in a high school game, whether they're flashbacks or what, I don't know. There's a portion where he's like shaking hands with the owner or head coach of the Dolphins. Obviously, somebody up in the branch. Jerry's laughing over here. I don't know what.
Does it have The Rock? I think to make Madden
I don't know
really
that guy's name.
successful, they should put the Madden video game set in the same universe as Ballers from HBO. That's a game that I would really like to play. Madden was one of the few games that I continued to play. That and NHL, as I kind of wound down my video game career. I sold my PlayStation 4 to buy that 4K Blu-ray player. I never had the time, Jerry. And I know you're kind of the same way with a wife and kid and job and successful toy review website. It's just there's other things that I have to pick and choose between. So am I going to read a comic, which I can sit here and do in the same room with my wife, or am I going to go to a separate room and really hone in on a game? A sports game, a shooter is one thing. I would love to be able to get into some of these story games, but I don't have the time.
Yeah. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the actor's name. I'm just going to show you a picture real quick, and you guys can have fun doing it. But it's the guy from like House of Cards.
Kevin Spacey.
Definitely not.
Oh yeah, he plays Remy Danton.
Right.
Let's just say he's Remy Danton from House of Cards, the lobbyist.
Yeah. So he's in Moonlight and Luke Cage as well.
He's a good actor. I love him. He's not a likable character on House of Cards, but nobody is.
So he plays some sort of I don't know, he seems sort of like mentor. I don't know if he was the character's father or
So this was in a trailer.
Right, this was all a trailer, and it was pretty long. Like I said, I just wasn't able. I was getting ready to come over here. I wasn't able to pay close
My
attention.
brother will be calling me shortly if it was that good, because my brother usually only calls me if it's football related. So I'm waiting on that phone call, but let's stay tuned. When is the Microsoft press conference?
I don't remember. There's like a couple more over the next couple days. I think Microsoft and Sony are 2 different days. There's 2 tomorrow. Maybe Bethesda and Microsoft, I want to say. I don't know the exact schedule. I just know it's later in the day. So
is Microsoft the most eagerly anticipated thing just simply because we're going to get the Scorpio 4 reveal?
I think so, yeah. I would say so. There was a lot of also Star Wars Battlefront 2 information, including it seems like the DLC is going to be completely free for Battlefront 2, which is pretty cool. And they're releasing The Last Jedi characters in a battlefield, battleground.
Can I play as Remy Danton as a Jedi though? Because if not, I'll be spending my time on Madden if I buy another console. I mean, you just got me like really excited for this Madden game. I know it may come across as sarcastic, but I think that is something that the franchise needs new life.
It was very interesting. That's my favorite word. It just seemed
interesting.
It seemed like a big this is a new thing in Madden. It's not just like a new feature, a quarterback cone or something. It's like, yeah, I love that.
Remember when they had the QB vision?
Right, that's what I'm talking about. I hated that.
If you had like Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, it's the whole field. If you had like Jake Delhomme, it's like 5 inches or something.
It was awful.
Oh, God. Do you remember the Madden where you could do the rewind on a play?
Oh, yeah. You get a couple per game or something like that.
That was just the dumbest shit.
It's not as bad as a quarterback vision, dude. That was just... like
my brother loved that.
It was awful. I guess if you got good at it, but it was like, wait a minute, so now I have to control this guy's head as I'm running around the field trying to myself find the right passer.
Okay, so maybe on the next edition of the pod, you can kind of chime in more on this.
I don't plan on. I wouldn't mind doing some articles for the site as well. I
wouldn't mind that either.
I don't plan on just doing E3 coverage or whatever, but it's something specific this is exciting.
Can we bring Gina Wilshire back for that, perhaps?
Oh boy,
freelance.
Star Wars looks good.
I loved her. Was it 2013? I think that was the year.
2013 is when she wrote for us.
Which you can really dive deep back into the back catalog of the epicreview.com and find some classic video game gems from her from 2013. So, enough about video games and E3. Let's go ahead and get into our not featured, because this is a double feature.
Double feature.
One of our 2 featured discussions of this podcast, which is the Icons of Cinema Summer Showdown for the 1970s.
Well.
Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
The snozberries taste like snozberries.
He got a deal for the male thing.
I'm gonna make him an offer to gamble with you.
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
Silent breed is people!
Hey, where are the white women at?
She's my sister and my daughter.
Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer.
What knockers?
Attica! Attica! Attica!
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
'Tis but a scratch.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore! Yo, Adrian! I did it!
You talking to me?
The Force will be with you. Always.
Toga! Toga!
This is Ripley, last survivor of the Nostromo. Signing off.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning. Can you dig it?
before we get into the 1970s, let's just go back to the 60s for a moment.
Yeah.
The winner for the 1960s was Sean Connery, James Bond. I know Jerry Barbecue 17 Reed would have been happy about that.
I said that would have been my pick.
Did you vote in the poll?
No.
Well, he doesn't have Twitter.
I don't have Twitter.
Poll.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So he beat out Mary Poppins in the final round.
Mary Poppins, y'all.
Mary Poppins is from Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I think you're wrong there.
Beat out Gregory Peck, who was Atticus Finch.
Yeah.
From To Kill a Mockingbird, Hal from 2001: A Space Odyssey, The Man with No Name, Clint Eastwood, of course,
and Audrey Hepburn
from Breakfast at Tiffany's. So let's kind of go over the rules of how this works.
Rule number 1: there are no rules.
We're going to change it up a little bit here for two reasons. One, we've discovered that Twitter only allows I've discovered that Twitter only allows 4-person polls. Another reason we're going to make this change is because as we get more and more familiar with these films as we move further through time, it's going to be icons that we want to include on this list, more than 6 for sure. I think this is going to be a tough list today with the 70s. So we're going to have 2 brackets of 4, and then we'll give 3 days each for you to vote on those to the listeners of DGWW Radio. And after you vote on those, of course, you'll have a week to vote on the final for the 1970s. And, of course, at the end, the goal is to have all these icons go up against one another and decide who is the most iconic film character from 1960 through now. And, of course, that's in the hands of you guys, the listeners, and we've had a lot of feedback. This was the 1960s episode was a very popular show as far as downloads and replays. There were a lot of votes. There was a lot of retweets, not just from Andrew Stokes' Twitter.
There were some people who argued people who aren't, on our list.
Mainly my wife. She was really upset that Maria from Sound of Music wasn't on there.
Hey, I fought for her.
So Jerry was kind of talking about what makes a character iconic.
Yeah.
And our job here is to not just determine that, because there's going to be more than 8 iconic characters we discuss,
right?
But try to almost rank them against these other characters. Mm-hmm. And I think at the end, what I want to do, which is something different than you and I did last time, Andrew Stokes, is to give them a seeding system. So 1 through 8, so that what we can set up the polls kind of like a playoff in football or basketball.
How are we going to seed our locks?
That is a question that I would say is best answered to keep it fair. I think those should be the last 3 seeds. 6, 7, and 8. And we'll decide amongst one another how we will rank those based on arguments, conversation.
Fisticuffs.
No fisticuffs, hopefully. This is going to be an intense...
The first rule of fisticuffs, you don't talk about fisticuffs.
An in-depth episode with lots of great quotes like that, I'm sure. I know this is something we mentioned on the last podcast, but kind of how in the broadest of terms we define the icon status of a film character is, say you're opening a movie theater and we want someone like our good friend of the show, Josiah Cameron, to do a mural for a theater. Would they make this mural? Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Yeah.
We use an example with Audrey Hepburn. Maybe not the most iconic film, but that image of her in the cafe, everybody knows that image, and it is cinema.
Even if you've never seen that movie,
even if you don't know the character's name,
you recognize them.
Isn't that kind of character if you don't know the character's name, though?
And
these are the things that keep me up at night.
And these are the things we can discuss on this podcast. And I made, with the help of Jerry and Andrew, their input, as in-depth of a list as I possibly could. I went through the top 100 films on IMDb.com of the 1970s. Then that was their ranking, critical ranking.
It was awful.
Then I went through the top 150 films based on fan voting and how they rated films on IMDb. So hopefully we have a good mix of flavor of critically received films versus films that were well received by the general public. Yeah. So let's go ahead and get this started, guys. Remember, we got 8 candidates here, and we each get 3 locks. Of course, we're not going to lock in too soon because,
maybe.
For example, if we all agree that Man with No Name in the 1960s should be on there.
Never heard of him.
It's full. He doesn't have a name. That's fine. It's full. It would be foolish for us to lock him in from the get-go. So usually locks will come at the end of the main discussion or toward the end.
Makes sense.
I'm saving my lock for Uncle Owen.
Okay.
All right.
Uncle Owen.
So let's go ahead and get into this, guys. I'm going to start with my wife's all-time favorite film. I think she would be happy for me to do this.
50 Shades.
We got to wait to get to Christian Grey till we get to the nows, which we can throw him in there.
Now, that's what I call... All right, keep going.
An icon of cinema. My wife's all-time favorite movie, directed by Steven Spielberg, 1975, Jaws. Mm-hmm. So the debate here, and something we want to clear up from the get-go, creatures are included.
Absolutely.
So the xenomorph, or the shark from Jaws, which is known in Jaws fandom as Bruce.
Bruce the shark.
The shark. I know this thanks to my lovely
After Spielberg's
wife.
lawyer.
I did not know that. I don't know if she knew that. She might have.
He named it after a lawyer.
I didn't know about the name was Bruce. So we're all learning things.
In honor of you, Abby, we're going to start out with Jaws. Now, the shark versus the crew. When I say the crew, I mean Captain Roy Schreider as Brody, Robert Shaw as Captain Quint, and Richard Dreyfuss, who will come up later in another film of the 70s as Hooper. It's kind of hard to separate this crew. If you were going to pick one that stood out above the others, it would probably be Brody, the sheriff, for sure.
I mean, he has the most iconic. Line in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought, when I discussed this with my wife, I thought that Quint was the more iconic of the three characters, even though Roy Schreider delivers that line, we're going to need a bigger boat.
Yeah.
And then the shark.
And the shark.
Not seen in the film, in part because, I mean, this is when Spielberg was making a name for himself. I know it's hard to believe that ever was a time in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Not the biggest budget here.
Yeah.
They don't show the shark much. It builds. This movie defines suspense from that point moving forward.
Yeah.
So the shark is an integral part of cinema history and is an icon in its own right. If you see a shark at the beach or you make a reference to a shark and it may not even be a great white, you're like, look, it's Jaws, or it's like Jaws. Not everybody, but that's kind of a generic term that comes up. So I'm interested. Obviously, I got some emotion involved in this. I love this movie as well.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite movie. That theme music.
Well, think about any time you see something that has, like, you think of movie attractions or anything, Universal Studios related, even though they've gotten rid of the ride at this point, you're thinking of that shark.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you see that, especially the old Universal glow term, there's a handful of movies you think of. There's three that come to mind, and correct me if these aren't Universal. Obviously, Jaws. Back to the Future, I believe, is one, because I just watched it this past week. So
hopefully you know.
Yeah, I'm fairly confident it was. And
The Mummy.
E.T., not The Mummy, even though that was
The Mummy is
Universal.
E.T. The old Mummy, definitely.
There used to be a thing on Universal VHS tapes where there was like a compilation of these iconic films, and all three of those films popped up. So, guys, how do you feel? And I think we're okay with this, of lumping this trio together, because as we discussed with like Buzz and Woody from Toy Story down the line, or the Ghostbusters down the line, that there's certain sets of characters
that belong together.
Yeah. That are synonymous with one another, and it's going to be hard to separate the two, and perhaps put
it's
them
hard to say
against
Woody or Buzz who's more popular. Right.
Exactly. So we're all okay with considering this as
the
a trio.
Orca, the crew of the Orca.
Yes, the crew of the Orca. Great example, Jerry. So, which one is more iconic here? The crew of the Orca or Bruce the Shark?
The Shark.
The Shark.
Shark.
I'll be calling the Shark Bucky from this point forward, but I think the Shark, definitely.
He never had a lawyer named Bucky.
I don't care.
Named Bruce.
But I
never had a lawyer named Bruce.
Okay, is the Shark as iconic as it is without these great characters hunting down this shark?
What does that mean?
What does that mean? The line, we're going to need a bigger boat.
No, I understand what it means. But I mean, I guess is Darth Vader as iconic as he is?
No, I think
if it wasn't for the cantina, like what?
No, that is completely. That would be like saying maybe you can.
I don't know what you're saying.
Obi-Wan in the cantina.
Right.
Here,
I think you already have answered your own question by saying, anytime somebody looks at a shark, they make a Jaws reference.
Or 90% of the time.
Yeah.
Sure.
I would say anytime. There's never been an instant where one person in the world has not looked at...
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
We're going to have the same type of discussion, a little bit different, but still similar with Alien. Because which is going to be more iconic? Is it the Xenomorph or is it Ripley?
Right.
And it's going to be hard pressed. I mean, it could feasibly happen with all these great characters on this list in the 70s to put two from the same film.
Right.
In this run.
Having looked at our list, this is one where I would argue you could do... I think two could come from and be separate.
For Jaws?
Work sense, yeah. The Orca crew and the shark.
So,
Jaws, Bruce, whatever you want to call him.
We are in agreement that
Bucky.
Jaws in some way
Kentucky.
is probably going to make this list.
Oh, I think this.
I think he should be in contention for now.
I think this is a number one seed.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he's gonna make this list.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's the crew of the Orca or the shark, one of those two.
The shark.
Well, the shark definitely, apparently, but maybe even the Orca as well is making this list.
That shark redefined blockbuster and tentpole film.
It did, and it was considered the first blockbuster.
I absolutely. That's what I'm saying. That shark is huge.
Literally and figuratively.
Huge.
This shark is huge.
That's not what he said. He didn't say we need a bigger boat. He said that shark is huge. Huge.
I said we should close the beach years ago. Sad.
Okay, so let's go ahead and I don't want to jump right to
the ocean.
We're going to build a wall around the ocean.
We're going to need a bigger wall.
We're going to make the fish pay for it.
So I want to save the alien for a little bit later to tease later in the show.
Ooh.
So let's talk about Marlon Brando, who's going to show up a couple times on this list, obviously.
Brando.
Because you're talking about him in Godfather, Apocalypse Now, and as Zor-El.
Yeah.
In Superman, which is another iconic appearance in a film. So, Jor-El. Who's Zor-El?
Is that Kara Zor-El is
Zorro.
Supergirl.
Oh, okay. All right. So, my mistake. So, let's talk about this film. Jerry, I've seen this film in bits and pieces. I've not seen it all the way through. 1979.
What?
Francis Ford Coppola. It is Marlon Brando as Colonel Kurtz. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
You are.
Jerry, you are the utmost authority on this film, at least between the three of us. So give us your take on this character, and is he worthy of this list?
Colonel Kurtz.
That's correct.
As Marlon Brando.
Or Marlon Brando as Colonel Kurtz.
Yeah, you're right, yeah. Which one is which? These are the questions that keep me up at night.
Well, if the character's the character's so iconic, sometimes you think of that person as that character.
We were talking just a few minutes ago. I think Marlon Brando definitely has more iconic roles on this list, and I honestly think Martin Sheen and Robert Duvall's characters in this film are even more recognizable. Robert Duvall saying, "I love the smell of napalm in the morning." I mean, honestly, that's and Charlie Don't Surf are some of the lines that jump out to me the most in this movie. Mm-hmm. So
should we consider Robert Duvall's character in this list?
Kilgore.
I
honestly, I would put him on there before I put Marlon Brando.
So let's take Brando out of consideration for this role. And let's we're not putting Kilgore on the list, but let's at least consider Kilgore, Robert Duvall's Kilgore from Apocalypse Now for this list. So we'll come back to him toward the end of the episode. All right, a film that I am very familiar with. I purchased the restored Blu-ray a couple years ago. They did a masterful job.
BVS, Batman vs. Superman.
Frame by frame of restoring this classic. It's Martin Scorsese directed, 1976. one of the films that put De Niro on the map, put Scorsese on the map. It's Robert De Niro as Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver. Jerry, the famous line from that, which he does say.
You talking to me? You talking to me?
One of the most quoted
lines. Are you talking to me?
In all of cinema.
Yeah.
Obviously, this film is also historically relevant because it inspired the Ronald Reagan assassination attempt by John Hinckley Jr. In Taxi Driver, basically Travis Bickle. We're going to spoil some of these movies. Obviously, they're a little bit older.
If you haven't seen this movie since 1976,
it's on Netflix queue.
Exactly. He's trying to impress a very young Jodie Foster in this film, and he wants to assassinate either a mayor or mayoral candidate, I believe, to get her attention. And John Hinckley thought it would be kind of the same type of deal, except on a grander level. If he could assassinate President Reagan, Reagan luckily survived that assassination attempt. This is one that I'm highly considering on this list. I think this is one that we need to pencil in for now.
I think I would agree here in one of the things we were talking about earlier when you mentioned Audrey Hepburn and Breakfast at Tiffany's. Even if you don't know the name of Travis Bickle, even if you don't know the name of the character De Niro plays, if you see that image of him with, the mohawk when he cuts his hair near the end of the movie, in that green jacket holding the two pistols out with that grin on his face, you recognize that. You recognize who that is. And to me, that has, I don't know, I think that defines when we're talking about iconic character.
So, Andrew, I know you haven't seen this film. I've literally got my Blu-ray copy in my hand to loan to you right now called Taxi Driver.
I'm a big Scorsese fan, so...
Much bigger than I am. And if I like this film, you'll probably love this film. Saying you're a much bigger Scorsese fan. So we are putting Bickle on this list. Robert De Niro
on the list.
For now. So
for now, right.
Let's go ahead and...
making the short list.
Exactly. Move on to Marlon Brando as Don Corleone. And when we consider this, are we putting the young Don Corleone, Robert De Niro, are we counting this as the same character or not? Obviously from Godfather, 1972, directed by Francis Ford Coppola.
I think we're specific. I would argue specifically putting Marlon Brando's Don Corleone.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he is far more iconic even than De Niro's interpretation.
Yeah.
You come to me on the day of my daughter's wedding. Is that it?
I mean, even in if you've seen last year's hit film Zootopia, there's a character that's just a parody of Don Corleone.
I made him an offer he can't refuse.
As most mob movies or anything, they make some type of references to that. So if we're talking about Don Corleone and Godfather right now, are we in agreement that two of these should not make this list, only one of them? And of course it's going to be Brando if we're picking between the two.
I would argue Brando is...
Well, he established a character.
Right, but this is the iconic of all those movies. I would put Brando as the one on the list.
The definitive Don, if you will.
Yeah.
I also have to say, if we're talking about movies, they're both epic films, but I think Godfather Part 2 is a better film. I mean, it's arguable.
But does it matter which...
but we're not talking about the epicness of the films. We're talking about the iconic characters.
Exactly.
So let's go ahead and put Marlon Brando, Don on this list. I mean, these are three very
Don Vito Corleone
characters already. We already kind of got three that seems like it's going to be locked in.
So we've mentioned Marlon Brando here a few times now. Is anybody watching the new Twin Peaks series?
No, I'm making my way through the old one right now. So.
Michael Cera is in it, playing a character named Marlon.
Michael Cera?
Yeah, Michael Cera is in the new series, playing a character named
Don Corleone.
He's named something Brando. I think his last name's Brando, but he runs around dressed like Marlon Brando, like a young Marlon Brando.
Yeah.
But he talks like Vito Corleone, and it's ridiculous. It's like this one scene kind of thing. I just had to mention it.
That's David Lynch for you.
As David Lynch for you.
He's out there. Let's go to an actor that we all know, we all love, and is going to come up multiple decades, Jack Nicholson for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, 1975, for the character R.P. McMurphy. I have not seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but I know this was the role that catapulted Nicholson to stardom. He won a Best Actor Academy Award for this role. Jerry, have you seen this film?
I have not seen this film.
Have you seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
No.
So this is an example of maybe it is somebody who should be on this list, but
Right.
it's hard for us to make a definitive call one way or the other.
Well, even if neither one of us had seen Jaws, I think we'd all still think...
We would know who the shark was.
Right, so...
I think we can all agree that Jack Nicholson is going to have more iconic roles down the road as we move through multiple
Maybe
decades.
1980?
Maybe 1989 as well.
89? Oh my gosh, he's going to be in there twice in the 80s.
I think he may be in there twice
At
in the
least.
80s. But we're on the 70s now. Let's go to Al Pacino as Sonny in Dog Day Afternoon from 1975. Again, a film I have not seen.
I love this movie.
This is a prequel to Baby's Day Out?
Shut up, Andrew.
Andrew, have you seen Dog Day Afternoon?
Nope.
This is a great movie. It is really entertaining. This is one though where I'm not sure. I don't know that I would put it on the iconic list of characters. It's a good movie. It's an iconic movie. I'm not sure any one character makes this film.
The film outweighs the character in this case.
I would argue so. It's a good way of putting it. But doggone it. I wish y'all had seen it to give me a counter argument.
And
there.
this is the great thing about these lists that makes, like, I saw 2001: A Space Odyssey because we were doing the 1960s.
Yeah.
I'll come out of this wanting to not only see more of these movies but track down some of these movies.
Yeah.
I'm eyeing the Criterion Collection Blu-ray of The Graduate, but it's $25 right
I'm
now.
eyeing the Criterion Collection version of Armageddon.
Yeah, well, did they did that.
that's a real thing.
literally that was a big deal when that came out.
Oh my gosh.
People were pissed.
My favorite thing about doing these is everybody can see, what hacks we are, basically, and that we don't know what we're talking about. The only films we've seen are Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire, and On.
Yeah.
Basically.
Wait till we get to 2002.
So in the little intro that had all the movie quotes, the part where they're going Attica, Attica, that's him in this movie. Have you guys ever? Do you know what it's about?
I have no idea.
These guys,
Not a dog that goes out
Al Pacino,
He's dog sitting for
Al
this New York
Pacino,
couple.
and the guy that plays Fredo in The Godfather are in this film. Jim, I'm trying to remember his name. Is Jim something, I think. But anyways, they're going to rob this bank. It's supposed to be a quick bank robbery, and it turns into a media circus.
Huh.
And so at one part, Al Pacino is going outside the bank, and I mean, the crowds are loving him. Like, the crowds are loving this and seeing this as kind of this...
It's like Airheads kind of?
This lash out against the establishment.
Okay.
And so he gets the crowds all rattled by chanting Attica because of the Attica prison riots.
Okay.
And of course, the crowds are going nuts over this.
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic movie. I don't know that I would... If we're talking about the most iconic of the iconic characters, the cream of the crop.
Right.
The best of the best of the best. I don't know that I would put this one on there.
Well, let's stay within kind of the same family of actors. Robert De Niro as Michael in Deer Hunter, 1978.
I love those games.
I've seen the Deer Hunter. I like the Deer Hunter. I own the Deer Hunter.
I watched this in college with Evan. We were kind of going.
Yeah.
We watched like Casino, Raging Bull. We also watched
De Niro Fest.
Yeah, we're on the De Niro.
We watched
Fest.
Rocky and Bullwinkle.
We watched Deer Hunter. Then we watched Meet the Parents. No, I'm just joking. Good movie. It's an epic.
It's
film.
a great movie. Yeah.
But as far as
Christopher Walken's in it.
With De Niro, there's more iconic roles even than this.
I would agree.
While this helped define his career, it wasn't his career-defining role, which I think kind of keeps it from making this list.
Yeah, fair enough.
So let's move on to one of the most well-known and quoted characters and one of the most popular memes on the internet. The inspiration for that, and that is 1971, directed by Mel Stewart, is Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
This, to me, defines iconic. Everybody knows who Willy Wonka is. You see that character. My 3-year-old, soon to be 4, loves this movie. She knows who Willy Wonka is. We see Gene Wilder anywhere, and she goes, "There's Willy Wonka."
And he's had so many other great roles too, but this is the one you think of, that purple suit.
Yeah.
Like we mentioned the meme where he's leaning. Not only did you see this film as a kid, you saw it multiple times in multiple sittings. I think we watched this at school. I watched it with my grandparents. I've probably seen this movie a dozen times.
There are few movies I have seen more than this movie.
And it's not like it's one of my favorite films of all time, but it is one of the most
incredible
rewatchable films.
It is. It is one of those
ever.
It's music. It's poetry. You can experience it over and over. It just gets better and better.
It's like poetry. It rhymes.
And I think with Gene Wilder, while we're on the subject, I think the iconicness of this role.
Is it snowing?
This is going to keep him from making the list for some of his other roles, because I had him on here for Blazing Saddles, obviously that Jim in Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, 2 Mel Brooks movies there. All right, so pronounce it right, Jerry.
Frankenstein.
All right, I've seen bits and pieces of this movie. My wife actually really enjoys this film.
It's a great movie if you've never seen it.
And here again, they cancel each other out, kind of. We can all agree, while these are great roles, and if there was in some alternate reality a sad one where there's no Willy Wonka, maybe he makes the list for these films.
Right.
But I think we're all in agreement. I would not even say this is one we're penciling in. I think this is one we're pinning in. It's making the list.
This is a stamp.
Yeah.
Willy Wonka, you just made the list.
While we're on the subject of that movie, though, and we're doing groups as well, how we feel about the Oompa Loompas.
Oh my gosh, the Oompa Loompas.
I mean, they're pretty, as a group, the minions of their time.
Definitely.
I just think we know that Wonka's making the list, and while they are iconic, the Oompa Loompas, are they going to be that song especially?
If you make a list, don't forget about me.
Are they going to be epic enough to knock some of these other ones off, especially
so long, Jaws.
Yeah.
So can Willy Wonka have his Oompa Loompas in tow? Maybe that's a good way to do that.
I don't know.
When we put Darth Vader,
and the
when we put Vader on there, the Stormtroopers, we're
they
not
only allow so many characters, and when I say characters, I mean letters on these Twitter polls, guys.
We couldn't separate Vader. We can't separate Vader, that image of Vader and the Stormtroopers behind him with Willy Wonka and his Oompa Loompas.
Let's hold off on the Oompa Loompas. Let's consider it, but let's go ahead and confirm Willy Wonka.
I think Andrew wants to use one of his...
for this list. If you want to use, one of
I'm
your
locking
3
them
locks,
in, baby. No way.
This list is just insane as we go through it.
Yeah.
We mentioned Star Wars. Mm-hmm. I mean, especially of any of the core characters of Star Wars, we could argue them all.
We can make a top 8 of just Star Wars characters.
Well, let's say something though.
Okay.
Yeah.
With this being a 70s list, we are just looking at A New Hope.
Yeah, so
we
no Boba Fett, no Yoda.
No Yoda, but no character development yet of Luke training as a Jedi or Han and Leia having a romance or anything. That comes in Empire Strikes Back in 80, so we are just looking at the original film.
And I think that brings us to 2 characters. You're talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi or Darth Vader. Mm-hmm. The 2 most fleshed out, definitive characters of this film. I guess we don't consider the prequels when we think about this, but it's kind of hard not to consider that stuff in the Clone Wars. I know we're kind of joking about it, but there's a lot of emotion there in that final lightsaber scene, and to see it come full circle, it does change the context of A New Hope.
But I don't know if y'all saw on Star Wars Day that there was an interview with a guy who's a medical technician now. I want to say he was like around lives in Tennessee. His parents went and saw Star Wars, and he was about to be born, and they named him Darth Vader. I mean, like, his name is like bad. Darth Vader, whatever.
Darth Vader, I am your
I think
father.
that guy should make the list out of pity. Darth Vader, the guy.
Can you imagine though how cool if your name's Darth Vader? I mean, that's pretty awesome.
What does he like Star Wars?
He likes Star Trek.
I assume so. He got interviewed on Star Wars Day by Star Wars.
Well, because his name is Darth Vader. Of course, he's going to be interviewed.
Yeah.
Well, he could have declined.
He could have, but
surely he'd let them know.
Yeah.
You know.
To me, of all the characters we have talked about that we will talk about, Darth Vader is one that I can see winning the competition down the road.
I think Vader stands alongside Jaws here as they are the 70s.
Yeah, I agree. And
I know they're both later 70s, but I think
you have David Prowse in the costume here. But the voice of James Earl Jones, which is one of the most iconic voices of all time, not just in film, but in general, that scene when the doors open, as you mentioned, Jerry, when the New Hope begins, and you see Darth Vader along with the Stormtroopers, and now you think to Rogue One, you tack that on to the beginning of this movie, it sends kind of chills down your spines. You think of him, and there's so many iconic moments with Vader, but I'm referencing this just because it's the introduction of this character to the world when he picks up that officer and he's choking him, and just not only the
Captain Antilles,
the physical prowess that he brings, and the
David Prowse.
I was thinking about making that pun, Jerry.
Okay.
I'm glad that you did.
I just made it.
And then, of course, so we see Vader on multiple fronts here, because not only that scene at the beginning, you have the lightsaber scene with Obi-Wan, but you see him, this is the one time that we see him in the TIE Fighter, outside of comics and novels and whatnot, kicking ass until a young pilot comes along and kind of evens the odds. So I think we're all agreeing that, Andrew, you're good with pinning Darth Vader.
Yeah. Let's be honest.
On this list.
Nearly anybody, any cast member from Star Wars probably could have been on this list.
Yeah. Even Chewie and C-3PO.
Chewbacca, C-3PO, R2-D2.
And they may show up
Princess
in the 80s.
Leia. Yeah.
Again.
Han Solo.
Right.
Ponz Baba, Dr. Evazan, Snaggletooth.
Oh, let's consider
Uncle
Ponda
Owen.
Baba real fast.
Can we put Ponda Baba in there?
No, I think it's going to have to be a pass.
Can that be one of my automatic stamps?
I mean, you can if you want to, but please don't waste it on that.
What are the little hoodie guys called?
Jawas.
Yeah, was it?
What are the little hoodie guys?
Utini.
All right, so Darth Vader.
Grand Moff Tarkin. Grand Moff Tarkin, seriously, though.
Yeah.
I think he could be...
The Death Star.
The Death Star.
Grand Moff Tarkin. That is...
Grandma Tarkin.
That is Peter Cushing playing him, and actually it's weird because you see Vader as kind of not a secondary character, but he has Grand Moff Tarkin in charge of him, or at least has Vader.
No, he's not in charge of him.
Well, I mean, rank wise, it feels that way.
Vader has no rank.
That's true. I mean,
he's a Lord.
I'm talking within the structure of the film. That it feels like that Tarkin outranks Vader as far as the military of the Empire. But it's debatable. It's semantics. We could sit here and argue this back and forth. What we will not argue is that Darth Vader is confirmed for this list. Now to a character that we all have tremendous affection and fear for.
Final answer.
One of Andrew Stokes, if not Andrew Stokes, all-time favorite movie. Same with Jerry. Same with me, as well as like the three of us. We all adore this movie.
Yeah.
1978, John Carpenter's Halloween, Michael Myers. So let's start with you, Andrew.
Yes.
You're one of the biggest Michael Myers fans I know.
Tell us
why he should make this list.
He hangs out in my yard in
because I mean,
jumpsuit.
He's like not even just an iconic character of the 70s. He's an iconic character of horror.
Yeah.
He's an iconic character of slasher films.
This started the slasher craze that led into the 1980s.
As Jaws kind of started the blockbusters, this started, that slasher craze.
There were a couple others before him, but he is the one that you think of.
Yeah, killing the teens, you know what I mean? Killing the co-eds, that kind of thing. And
there's no Jason, there's no Freddy probably without Michael Myers.
They didn't have like the teens doing like the drugs and sex and alcohol, you know what I mean? Like, and then you have like the pure, the pure character.
So the final girl.
Yeah, we need to mention Laurie Strode because Jamie Lee Curtis,
iconic character as well.
and not only known for this role and for her screaming,
right?
Hence the even the Scream Queens
right
show, but I mean, known for sort of setting that what would now be called a trope as the final girl or the last girl.
Yeah, which is a trope that she established, and she has to be considered for this film. But the fact that I know this is just 1970s, and we're talking about 1978, that Myers, except for Halloween 3, spanned this whole franchise up through the Rob Zombie remakes. Now you got Danny McBride working on the one that's coming out this Halloween, which is crazy to think. Although
this year,
this year, this Halloween, which I'm excited for. Different story. I think that I want to pin Michael Myers in. But while we're talking about horror, and we don't have to quit talking about Michael Myers here, but let's also consider, which came first, 1974, Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
This is the first kind of known quantity as far as a character in horror. When I say character, I mean a gruesome figure. You have a mask, you have a definitive weapon with the chainsaw.
Norman Bates comes before. Was he part of your 60s discussion?
Yes, he was.
Oh, the character from Psycho? Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that would be one where before the Universal monsters, you have the Universal monsters, and then you have a period where there's lots of like generic monsters or just creatures without names. But then you get to Norman Bates where there's named. Then you get to Leatherface where you start having these characters that, like you said, are gruesome. They're not normal looking. That start becoming more recognizable, sometimes even in the movies themselves.
Yeah, you can see the mask at any drugstore as time passed. More expensive Halloween stores. God knows those masks can get up to $70, $80 now. For sure. Sometimes even $100.
It's okay that mine's not movie quality.
Yeah. So, while Leatherface was that first really known character, Jerry,
Leatherface.
this is you're out of the three of us, I would consider you the horror expert.
Okay.
So, do you consider Leatherface a slasher character?
Absolutely.
Even though he's using a chainsaw. Okay.
Absolutely.
So, while that started the slasher kind of subgenre of horror, Halloween defined it for forever. Yeah. Not just the 1980s, but to this very day. So it's so hard. This is a tough with Leatherface versus Michael Myers, but just because
for you,
that's a new movie coming out.
Just because one comes first doesn't necessarily mean it's the more iconic of the two. I'm gonna say I want to pin in Michael Myers for this list.
For sure. I want to pin Michael Myers and
stab him through the heart.
No, sorry. I messed that up.
Hey, it's okay, Jerry.
I was gonna make the joke.
Sewing needles.
Remember when Michael Myers pins the guy to the wall and he's hanging there? Yeah, that's the kind of joke I was gonna make.
He was hanging out with,
and when we get
maybe it was even in poor taste.
I just wanted to shout out too. I don't think this character makes the list or whatever. I guess want to waste our time. But shout out.
There is no waste of time.
I want to give a shout out to Dr. Loomis as well.
Dr. Loomis.
Donald Pleasance.
Donald Pleasance.
Yeah, just, that's a cool, kind of iconic character from the franchise for sure.
Was, could make this list as he was a Bond villain. He was Blofeld. And Blofeld was played by many different people. But he played Blofeld.
Was he the first one to play Blofeld though?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, you're a Bond expert as well.
You're the expert.
I think he was the first Blofeld.
No.
Yes, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Final answer?
Let's stay in horror.
In Yule twice.
Stay in horror.
Sissy Spacek is Carrie, 1976, directed by Brian De Palma.
Hashtag iconic.
Man, that scene with the blood spilling on her at the dance. You see that scene. You don't have to have seen Carrie. You don't have to have read Stephen King's book, Carrie. You know who that character is.
You don't have to even know anyone named Carrie.
This is one that I want to pencil in on the list. This is also the film that not introduces, but I think it actually does introduce John Travolta.
Oh my gosh.
One of his first
John
films.
Travolta.
Somebody's going to come up later on this episode.
Yeah. Are you actually penciling people into this list?
Well, I'm doing it digitally.
Down.
But when I say pencil, I mean we'll come back.
Well, I know. I'm just saying. Okay.
Yeah, Carrie, I'm gonna pencil her in on this list. So far, let's just look at where we're at. We did this for the 60s.
Carrie White.
We have.
That's her name.
Bruce the Shark from Jaws, Bickle, Robert De Niro, Taxi Driver, Don Corleone as portrayed by Marlon Brando, I know I misspelled that, Gene Wilder, Willy Wonka, Darth Vader, Michael Myers, and of course Sissy Spacek as Carrie.
Marlon Brando is a fish.
Well, I live on Marlin Street, and my phone auto-corrected that.
Now people can come find Brad.
Yeah, Marlin Street. I'm sure there's many. So
in the foothills, North Carolina.
Every town has a Marlin Street.
Let's go to completely different directions for this podcast. When I was in elementary school, as I'm sure you guys did, we had to read the book.
I went to elementary school as well.
I'm glad to know that.
I did not.
We had to read the book Charlotte's Web.
Never heard of it.
Did you guys read that in elementary school?
Yes.
Or at least the teacher maybe read it
or
to you.
We read it. Yeah, I think we read it,
yeah.
or they read it to us or something.
It's kind of, we talked about
some movie.
To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah.
That's a book everybody has to read in high school. This is a book that a lot of kids read in elementary school. And then the movie 1973, we're talking about Charlotte's Web. In particular, Debbie Reynolds voicing Charlotte from Charlotte's Web. That movie, it's an iconic animated film. We can all agree on that.
Yeah.
And out of all the animated characters, this wasn't, I won't say a dark time for Disney, but this was right before the Renaissance with Little Mermaid and stuff.
Oh, this is quite a few years before the Renaissance.
Yeah, but so this is kind of the big one for animation here. I think she's worth kind of penciling into this list.
When did the book come out?
It was predated the movie by far. I think it was like early 1950s or something. I will check that. We actually do have internet.
White?
Yeah, we actually do have internet today, folks, which is
fantastic.
Charlotte's Web. Charlotte's Web. 1952.
1952. Okay, so I was kind of right with that.
The character is, I think, an iconic character.
Yeah, I'm going to put her on the list. I don't think this is one that will end up making the list, but one worth consideration.
I have to lock that in. I love Charlotte Flair, so...
She's one I could consider locking in.
Okay.
I know that's crazy, but...
I'll save mine for the Oompa Loompas.
What if Charlotte did a move where she, caught people and stuff?
Those are finishers. So
yeah, Charlotte's Web. That'd be pretty cool.
Let's go ahead and move on to one that should be a little bit easier to discuss and perhaps put on this list.
Or take off the list.
Sylvester Stallone as the Italian stallion Rocky Balboa, 1976. Also add to the fact that Stallone directed this film. It was nominated
Stallone wrote this film.
Yeah, it was nominated for Best Picture. I'm not sure if it won Best Picture. I need to double check that.
I think it may have.
I think it may have as well.
I think it did.
However,
there's a statue of this
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which we mentioned earlier, but it was the biggest film as far as not just critical acclaim, but
there's a statue of this character, in the city. So
yeah, that's a pretty big deal.
The theme's iconic, one of the most, as you were saying earlier, movie themes of all time.
If you think about a training montage, you think about this character.
Yeah.
If you think about an entire sport, boxing, you think about Muhammad Ali,
Mike Tyson,
or this character.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And I will say that he stood the test of time, and this is the first time we saw him as well. And while this is not my favorite Rocky movie, it is the best Rocky movie.
It is not. This is not Rocky 4. You're right.
Rocky 4 is my favorite Rocky.
Is Rocky 4 your favorite?
Yeah.
Rocky 3 is my favorite.
Really? Oh, I love Rocky 2 is probably my second favorite. But we can talk about those films.
Creed's my favorite,
which you saw.
Yeah, I did. Creed's my favorite.
Which
Rocky 5. Rocky 5 is my favorite. Shut up, Andrew.
Hey, yo, kid, you got something behind your ear. God,
what's touching me, mister?
I love that line, though. I had a friend in high school. We quoted Rocky 5.
I got the best Rocky story.
Okay.
So in college, I had to do a report on St. John of the Cross.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did a oral presentation. I had to do an oral presentation. And so I included a Rocky quote from each of the 6 films at that time in the presentation.
What was 5? Hey, yo, kid, you got something behind your
I don't
ear.
exactly remember what 5 was, but I did talk about how somebody took St. John of the Cross and beat him like he committed a crime. So,
I'm going to pin Rocky in here.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm feeling at this point.
I don't think you're as kind of... is this unanimous?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Rocky,
Yeah,
definitely. I'm feeling at this point, I'm seeing this as Vader, Jaws, and Rocky at this point.
And I don't think... It's going to be hard for those to come off the list. I don't think they will.
I want Myers.
Oh, I think that's going to be up for discussion, but another one that's going to be very hard to come off the list.
Rocky comes in with a punch. Bam! Vader comes in with a lightsaber.
Somebody will lock Myers in if he doesn't make the list.
I feel so. It'll be a Cold War. We'll all you lock him in.
Myers, you just made the list.
Still a lot more of epic films to go in the 1970s.
We saw 16 pages of films to go.
Not exactly.
Dang, you got some good ones coming up there, too.
Yeah, we do. This is getting good, folks. So let's talk about the definitive superhero origin movie film.
Iron Man.
No. We got the 2000s.
Wonder Woman.
Christopher Reeve as Superman in Richard Donner's 1978 classic. This established superhero filmmaking for generations to come.
Nobody knew who Superman was before this film.
As iconic as Superman has been since 1938, when people think of Superman, I think this is the image they see in their head. The outfit, the look, the spit curl. It's going to be hard for him not to make this list. They captured the joy and hope of that character so well. When I think about this film, what sticks out to me is the beginning where he's discovering his powers and he's running next to that train. And just the utter joy that he is able to give in this performance, Christopher Reeves. I don't see how he cannot make this list. Jerry, I know you're not a Superman fan per se. When I say, you know what I mean.
Superman's not one of my top favorites, but I am a Superman fan.
Is he above Spider-Man?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, so...
But so is
Mr. Freeze.
So thoughts on Christopher Reeve making this list?
I mean, I think one of the things, too, and this is going to sound a little, maybe a little hokey, but I mean, with Christopher Reeve becoming such just a person who was so involved in so many things, it's sometimes hard to separate the man from the character Superman. I mean, from all the ways that he inspired people and sort of who he became and overcame his accident paralysis and stuff, and overcame that through like being involved in so many different
the money he raised for
charitable functions. But you see Superman, and I mean, you're just that whole, I mean, literally the image of hope is just there,
which is lacking in a lot of modern day, especially DC films. Wonder Woman, when we reviewed this, it kind of reminded me in a way, as far as the hope-filled messaging of a lot of that film, of this Dick Donner Superman film. Andrews, how do you feel?
I've never heard anybody call him Dick Donner.
You never heard anybody call him Dick Donner?
No.
Kevin Smith calls him that all the time.
Well, I bet Kevin Smith does.
Well, he's on first name with Dick Donner, so Kevin Smith.
You call him Richard.
So, Andrew Stokes, you've seen this film.
Nope.
What?
You're joking.
No, I've never seen this film.
You've never seen Superman?
Is this the one where he goes around the Earth backwards?
Yes.
Okay, I've seen that scene. No, I've never seen this film.
With Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor?
Have you ever seen Superman 2?
Margot Kidder?
No.
Oh my god.
You've never seen Superman 2?
I've seen Superman Returns.
So everybody just runs around yelling "kneel before Zod," and that doesn't mean.
No, I know things like that. Okay. Like the going around the Earth backwards. Like I know things about this, and I do think of this Superman. Like I can picture him for sure.
Okay, so
why have you not seen this film?
Why?
I'm just curious.
Because I wasn't alive in the 70s.
I know.
Superman wasn't. I was not a big fan of Superman growing up. I thought he was a dumb character. Probably until Superman Adventures, and I really started to get into the character then.
My cousin Craig was his favorite character. He had the box set as a kid of the VHS, and later on the DVDs, and I kind of borrowed those through him. I have a Blu-ray copy of Superman 2. I know that.
I feel like I'm going to leave here with a stack of Blu-rays.
Yeah, I have Superman.
I always leave Brad's house with a stack of Blu-rays.
I never bring them back.
He doesn't know it.
I leave your house with a stack of graphic novels, so it's all good. If he is not on this list, I will lock Superman in on this list.
Oh, you waste your lock on this. Superman.
I don't know if we're...
I would put him on.
I would put him on the list as well, I agree. I've never seen Jaws either, though, so... I'm just kidding.
Oh my god. Wow. I was about to
Jerry fell out of his chair.
I about fell out of my chair.
As big of a movie fan as you are, I was about to say, if you hadn't seen Jaws, so let's move on.
I was locked in on that opening scene.
Yeah, such a great scene. Really reels you into the film.
Oh man.
Let's move back to some horror, guys. So from hope to horror, let's talk about The Omen. Harvey Stephens is Damien. We have Gregory Peck again. We talked about him in To Kill a Mockingbird. He returns as the dad, Robert Thorne, in The Omen. The Omen.
The Omen.
No, it's The Omen. The Omen is a great film. Damien is obviously one of the most recognizable characters in horror.
Yeah, he's up there.
If at this point in our list, though, I don't see him making the top
I don't
8.
see Damien being above one
Vader.
Of the other names on the list who you have right below it.
Yeah, so let's move on to that. Obviously, this is argued by many as the most frightening horror film of all time, one that gave generations of children nightmares, and that is Linda Blair as Reagan in The Exorcist.
What the heck were children doing watching The Exorcist?
1973. It did take me a while to see this film. I watched it 3 or 4 years ago. They released the remastered edition on Blu-ray.
Okay.
And I'm watching this whole film, Andrew Stokes, and I've been told my whole life this is one of the scariest movies of all time. And you get to about an hour and a half in, you're like, this isn't that scary. And then you get to that final exorcism at the end, and the things that Reagan does in this movie. And says, oh my God. I mean, it's stuff that it sticks with you for the you can see this movie one time, and those final scenes stick with you for the rest of your life.
Anytime somebody wants to show something scary, I mean, just an image of Reagan's face once she is possessed by Pazuzu.
And oh my God, I gotta make a Mondo reference as I do a Nolan reference, but I don't know if it was Mondo's or Gallery 1988, one of the best posters they ever did. I think it may have been Gallery 88. I'll show it to you, but God, that Reagan poster they did. But anyway,
I thought it was cool that it was one of the ones where you could actually press a button, her mouth opens, and the poster just shoots gunk out at you.
And this set all the exorcism film tropes. There's great exorcism of moments and films throughout the history of horror.
Yeah.
We think of something like The Conjuring, and we reviewed that. If it would have came before The Exorcist, it is The Exorcist.
Yeah.
But this set the precedent for all that. The Exorcism of Emily Rose is very, very frightening. That's a movie that actually frightened me in high school.
There was that series of exorcism films that Richard Simmons did.
I think he disappeared. So
that's Exercise.
He's
Sorry,
okay.
Exercise.
Andrew
okay.
Stokes, I'm getting by your vibe. Have you seen this movie?
No, I have not.
Oh my God!
But again, I know these scenes though. When I know these scenes,
Which kind of proves the point.
Exactly.
Why should you make this list? But you're
Everybody-
leaving here with that Blu-ray as well.
All right, guys. I'm having a long week ahead of me.
You're gonna have a very messed up week. You're watching Taxi Driver.
Taxi Driver, The Exorcist, yeah.
Right. You should end with Superman, just to end on.
You're
like
gonna
a
need
hopeful
something
note.
lighter and hopeful.
Oh man, I don't see how she doesn't make this list though.
No, Reagan's on there. Linda Blair is Reagan.
All right, so we've locked in 15 people.
Well, we
so
haven't
far.
locked
many yet.
Nobody's
No,
been
no,
officially locked in. We're just
Sure.
okay. So let's move on. Just a mention here. George C. Scott as Patton, 1970. Started off the decade, was nominated, won several Academy Awards. I have never seen Patton. Have you?
I've seen Patton.
I mean, it's recognized as one of the greatest war films of all time.
Patton. I mean that's a huge role. We were talking about that on the way over. That Nixon loved this film. Nixon apparently watched this film quite often prior to the Watergate scandal and things as well, and involvement in Vietnam. So I don't know if that's just kind of an aside, but I think that's definitely a role that is iconic.
I just don't
That
know
is
if
not as there's not like a Patton fandom. You know, people are not getting like Patton posters and Patton tattoos, but that's a very iconic
Donald
role.
Trump has a Patton tattoo. I just want to tell you that.
It's
huge.
Fake news.
I just want to say that here, Patton's just such an iconic figure in history.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how great this performance was, it's hard to reconcile it with a larger-than-life human being. You're talking about greatest generals of all time. He's up there with Lee. He's up there with Grant. I mean, you could go on and on. But I think it's going to be hard within this podcast for him to make the list. But let's keep it within the context of history here. You brought up Nixon, one of the most famous films of all time from the 1970s. I believe it won. It was nominated for Best Picture. It didn't win because we talked about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. What a 76 must have been insane.
I would think people would say that period from the early 70s to the late 70s, insane for movies.
So, and what I'm referencing here is a movie that is about the Watergate scandal, released not too long after the Watergate scandal. It is All the President's Men.
It was like 13 hours of its time.
It's 2019 will have Kobe Faye.
Robert Redford here plays Bob Woodward, Dustin Hoffman as Carl Bernstein. When you think of reporting American investigative journalism, you think of Woodward and Bernstein, and they hit these characters on the head. Bob Woodward is a guest at least 2 times a week on the Morning Joe TV show that is part of my morning ritual, especially during the school year.
So you're biased.
Yeah, I love Bob Woodward. I've read a couple of his books. He has several incredible books, but one's called Obama's Wars, and it talks about Obama's use of drone warfare during the War on Terror and where that falls within the context of presidential military history. Again, that's the history teacher / nerd coming out in me. This is an iconic film. This is one of the most important films of the 1970s, but I think it kind of goes along with Patton. As good as Redford and as good as Hoffman are in this film, the people that defined American investigative journalism are so large within a historical context, it's hard to put movie characters playing them on this list, no matter how good of a film or a performance it is. So I think that's going to keep them from making the list.
Yeah. All right. Good point.
Let's go on to a film I will say I haven't seen. It's been sitting on my entertainment stand for like a year, and that is A Clockwork Orange, Stanley Kubrick, 1971. Malcolm McDowell as Alex. Andrew, I don't think you've seen this film either. Jerry, you've seen this film.
I've seen this film.
Tell us about this role and whether or not it should be considered for this list.
I think Alex is one of those very iconic characters again, and even if you haven't seen this movie, just when you look at some you'll see sometimes characters or will have the tattoo, or not tattoo, but the face paint, the paint over their eye. You automatically know who you're seeing an homage to. So I think Alex is a pretty recognizable character. He's a very disturbing character.
Is this a case where the director Kubrick and the film are bigger than the character, though?
I think this is, I think what's interesting to me is there's a lot of fandom for Alex sometimes, and you will find people that like this character who haven't actually seen this movie.
They like him ironically.
And Malcolm McDowell makes the con circuits, and 90% of the stuff he's not signing for Heroes or his reemergence of ripping off Donald Pleasance as Dr. Loomis in the Halloween remake. This is what he's known for. He's a good actor.
He's a great actor.
But he never had a role like this.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he came back in multiple iconic roles. And I'm sure if you saw this film, maybe you would have predicted that for his career. I don't think it makes the list based on all the other incredible films we mentioned before.
If we're at the part where we're starting to trim as we go, then no.
I just want to give a mention. We mentioned Hoffman earlier. Meryl Streep, Dustin Hoffman in a film that got a lot of Academy Award consideration, Kramer versus Kramer, 1979. It's a film about a couple dealing with a divorce and child custody battles. Very serious, very emotional film, epic film, but Hoffman's not making the list as Bob Woodward. As Bernstein. He's not going to make the list in Kramer versus Kramer. Let's move on to John Travolta in 2 iconic roles in the 1970s. John Travolta and we should mention Andrew and Jerry kind of are dealing with some allergies and some cold stuff, so we apologize for that. But the Confirmed Epic podcast must go on, just like the dancing in Saturday Night Fever must go on. Brings us to John Travolta, 1977, Saturday Night Fever, and then again, back-to-back iconic roles for him. He comes back in 1978 as John in Grease, alongside Sandy's Olivia Newton-John as Sandy. Wow. If you haven't seen these films, you know these characters. Yeah. You can see John Travolta on that dance floor. I have not seen Saturday Night Fever.
Saturday Night Fever is it's a good movie, but I think it's one of those movies that, too, that character, I mean, if somebody thinks about the 70s...
If they think about disco.
Yeah, if you think about 70s, you have to think about disco. And if you think about disco, you think about John Travolta in this role in the white suit.
Yeah, I mean, he was introduced in Carrie, but this is what made Travolta A-list, and he would go on to make hit after hit through the 1990s. So, oh man. I like Grease better. I've seen Grease multiple times. My wife loves Grease.
I'm surprised that you didn't put...
Am I missing a Travolta role here?
Not a Travolta role. I'm surprised you didn't put a former George Lucas film on here.
I thought about it. I know American Graffiti.
Yeah.
It put Harrison Ford. It introduced us to him.
Bob Falfa.
Bob
Falfa, does it sound like Boba Fett? A little bit.
You got Ron Howard in there as well. That's a great film, but I just thought with Star Wars being considered so much and discussed so much that it wouldn't make the cut. So that's the only reason I didn't list it.
People either really like Grease, they really like American Graffiti, and they kind of...
it
kind of take sides.
It's the Armageddon or Deep Impact debate. Which one do you like more?
Well, Armageddon made the Criterion Collection.
That's true.
But I don't like Armageddon.
I like Deep Impact.
I think here we have Travolta canceling himself out a little bit.
Canceling himself out? I'm almost saying he gets on here twice. Him and Olivia Newton-John.
Which I would pair them together.
Let's be honest.
Sandy and...
we could pair Sandy and John and Sandy together. I could see that happening in that specific role. His name's not John, isn't it? Danny Zuko.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
John Travolta.
I'm sorry. I don't know why I put John. Okay, a lot of homework went into this list.
Yeah.
I won't say it was good. Well done homework.
I see John Travolta being on here twice because I'll be honest, I think he is one of those folks that we're going to see like in the 80s with Eddie Murphy or Michael Keaton. Michael J. Fox, that we see a bunch of times on there because that Schwarzenegger, because that person was so...
They defined that decade.
They defined that decade. And I think John Travolta's here defining the end of the 70s. Twice.
So we'll come back to this. We'll consider Travolta. I had him listed as Danny. I just kept looking at John.
Oh my gosh.
So you would have both those characters on here.
I think they could be.
I think one of them.
Are we cool with pairing Danny and Sandy together?
Yeah, I think we're cool with pairing. But
I mean, think of Summer Love.
But if I'm thinking of if I'm thinking of an iconic 70s, I'm thinking of Saturday Night Fever.
I think in the moment, of course, this is all subjective. Saturday Night Fever was a bigger movie. They were both huge, but was a more decade-defining movie. But as far as a movie that holds up to repeat viewings and stands the test of time, not that Saturday Night Fever doesn't. I'm not saying that.
People watch Grease more. Grease has a...
And it's a musical, too.
Grease has a crazy following.
Yeah, so that's the only reason I would put Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta in that film together above the role in Saturday Night Fever.
Yeah.
So let's move on to an actor that made the finals of the 1960s. Is Clint Eastwood popping up 2 times here. Dirty Harry. Go ahead, punk. Make my day. One of the most iconic lines in all of cinema, and especially the 1970s. He's also in the 70s as the outlaw Josie Wells. So I don't think Outlaw Josie Wells is making the list because that is secondary to his spaghetti western establishment in the No Name.
If you
trilogy.
think of Clint Eastwood in a western, you're thinking of The Man with No Name.
Exactly.
But if you're thinking him as anything else, you're thinking him as Dirty Harry.
I know this is one that I think needs to be put on the list right now. And you think about there's multiple sequels as well. I mean, Magnum Force,
the Deadpool.
I think was that 80s. I think that
The
may have
Deadpool
been
may have been early 80s.
Yeah, but
there's
Magnum
quite a few
Force
sequels.
and the original Dirty Harry are definitely two of the most definitive films of the 1970s. I went back and watched these when I was like a senior or junior in high school. I mean, these films are tremendously well done. They're well paced.
All right, let's do 12 movies. Or 12 characters.
No.
I would love to put Death Wish on here too, but I don't think it's Dirty Harry is certainly more iconic.
So one action hero to another as we pick up the pace a bit here. James Bond won the 60s with Connery Bond. Unfortunately, Sir Roger Moore just passed away. Mm-hmm. We mentioned that on another edition of the podcast, but Roger Moore's James Bond.
And he has far more movies than you have.
Yeah, he does. I just listed the
he was
the
Roger Moore was the longest running James Bond.
Yeah.
He made the most movies as James Bond.
But this is when he was more of a campier Bond than a suave Bond.
He was definitely a little bit chummier.
And he was a lover too, more than he was a fighter.
He was.
So
there's a lot of the tropes that people think of as James Bond that are Roger Moore era that don't show up in the Sean Connery movies.
He never said though, I want a martini shaken, not stirred. And I just know that because that was a piece of trivia that came up after he unfortunately passed away. Are we putting another Bond on this list?
When I think of James Bond, I think of Roger Moore, James Bond.
And you said that last time.
Yeah. So
I think of Daniel Craig, but
I think of Pierce Brosnan and Connery, but I would absolutely say Roger Moore belongs on the list.
I think so. Well, I know, right?
I'm not. I don't think that it. Whatever.
The longest running James Bond, Roger Moore. I think for so many people, he is their James Bond.
Okay, this list is just getting insane.
I know, I mean, right?
We'll have to pare it down.
Wait till the 80s.
All right, yeah, and the 90s as well. Mel Gibson, Mad Max. Now, this is 1979, directed by George Miller. You think of Mad Max as being more of an 80s franchise.
When I think of Mad Max, I don't think of Mad Max. I'm thinking of The Road Warrior or Beyond Thunderdome. Mad Max is a good movie, but the character really comes into its own in The Road Warrior. Okay. And so I would argue you could put this one off to the 80s.
Yeah, especially with the competition that's on this list as well.
Of course, then we're going to run up to Mel Gibson as in Lethal Weapon.
Oh, yeah.
So, it's okay.
Oh, gosh.
What happened?
All right.
That's future us problems.
Yeah. John Belushi, Animal House, 1970. Toga. I mean, this is...
It's a big role.
This defined the college party film right here. It was the...
70s was a formative year for film.
Yeah, apparently it was a very big year.
Huge
for film.
decade. Huge decade.
I mean, when you think of raunchy comedy, when you think of National Lampoon, you think of this. This
movie
established
sets
that.
the tone. It creates a whole genre of films.
Yeah,
essentially.
I think he needs to be penciled in and considered here. So I don't know if he'll end up making the cut. But it's definitely not even worth mentioning. It's worth considering to be one of the finalists on our list here.
Okay.
Let's move on to one I don't think is going to make the list, but deserves a mention. Diane Keaton as Annie Hall. Big movie, arguably Woody Allen, who stars and directs this film as well, stars in it. Maybe the best Woody Allen film. Mm-hmm. Probably the most well-known Woody Allen film, but I don't think a Woody Allen film in this pantheon of film is going to make our list. What about The Warriors, Jerry?
I love The Warriors, but
79.
I feel The Warriors didn't really become iconic till later on. I really think The Warriors is a film that people discovered years later.
Yeah.
So I would not, if we're talking about 70s icons, I don't know that I could put The Warriors truly the 70s icon. I think it becomes discovered later on.
Speaking of a warrior, Let's talk about Bruce Lee and Enter the Dragon 1973, directed by Robert Klaus. When you think of Kung Fu films, when you think of Bruce Lee, and he would have many films, this is the one you think of.
Enter the Dragon is the one most people are familiar with.
It inspired almost every Kung Fu trope that would go on to last through the 1980s.
Such a good movie.
I think of, Family Matters. You think of Urkel when he turns into Stefan in that machine, but there's one episode or two where he turns into the Kung Fu Master. I can't remember what he called himself, but it was completely obviously ripping off Bruce Lee. And that's just one example of many of when this has been done throughout the history of film and TV.
Here is the hard thing, I think, with this role.
Okay.
With this role. Are you thinking of the character Bruce Lee plays in this movie, or are you thinking of Bruce Lee himself?
I was going to ask, what's the name of Bruce Lee's character?
There are some actors where I think you could argue Stallone plays legit different characters. Like you would say, I see Rocky versus Rambo.
Yeah.
Chuck Norris.
Yeah.
Chuck Norris is just Chuck Norris.
Right.
I mean, I think it's, other than Walker, Texas Ranger, it's tough to pull out a character where you're like, that's a definitive character.
Adam Sandler's kind of the same way.
Adam Sandler, maybe. Yeah. So I would say here,
the character necessarily.
Bruce Lee. We're talking about Bruce Lee here. It'd be like trying to say that Ace Ventura or somebody was, this iconic character. And maybe we'll get there, but it's really more, this is what's introducing people to Bruce Lee.
Like that introduced
just like that
introduced
people to Jim Carrey. And realize, he always does stuff like that.
This is the case where the actor outweighs the character, which makes it on a very competitive list for that character to make our list. So I think we're going to pass here.
If you have a picture, people are more interested because it's Bruce Lee rather than because it's that character.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Agreed.
If you put a velvet poster on your wall, it's because they're interested in Bruce Lee, not the character.
Okay, let's give two quick Disney mentions. I don't think either one's making the list, but this is the two most well-known Disney films of the 70s. Robin Hood and Little John from 1973. Robin Hood.
I love that movie, but I agree with you.
The song Robin Hood and Little John walking through the forest.
I used to love that.
Scooping up the field mice, popping
on the head.
The Rescuers, 1977. I actually like The Rescuers Down Under better.
It's a good movie.
Which was the 80s, I think. So Rescuers, one of the most, as far as that stood the test of time and set up a sequel, probably the biggest Disney film of the 1970s animation wise, but not making the list here. Walter Matthau as Coach Buttermaker in Bad News Bears. There was a remake of Bad News Bears as well, but of course,
sure there was.
Billy
Bob Thornton.
Yeah. Okay. And that's a big role for Billy Bob Thornton. Some people remember.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, that was a well-known role for Billy
Was it
Bob
really?
Thornton. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not. No idea. I had no idea.
Okay. He just kept talking about that movie, man.
But we've already got a sports icon here in Stallone with Rocky.
Yeah, one is enough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not.
I don't think he beats Vader or somebody.
It's not knocking anybody off the list, Jerry. I'm gonna let you end the list here with two characters that are important to you. So tell us why they're in consideration.
Well, first one, I thought I'm gonna say I'm not sure that she makes the list. Maybe is Foxy Brown, played by Pam Grier. I mean, we have to mention the blaxploitation genre, because that is a huge genre of movies that comes into its own in the 70s when you had folks who did not see themselves represented in film. I mean, I think we've kind of talked about a lot of our lists are predominantly white males. And so...
Which is
which is an issue that we're...
70s.
Yeah.
Well, right. But blaxploitation was a genre that was putting African Americans making movies.
We have Linda Blair on the list and Sissy Spacek.
We had Darth Vader.
So I think Foxy Brown could be a good contender. I don't know, again, with the competition there.
There's 14 on our list now.
The person I'm going to put on there that I'm gonna fight for, I'm going to argue.
You gonna lock him in?
I'm going to lock him in.
Oh, Lord.
Is Shaft by Richard Roundtree. If you ask me, defining
the theme music's more iconic to me than the character.
If you talk about movies, music defining, decades and stuff. I mean, I think
I've seen Shaft.
Yeah, I think with the 70s a lot, you have disco music, but then you have funk as well. Funk coming into its own in the 70s. I think that's, but Shaft is part of that. I mean, that's part of the aesthetic of that film.
I want to tell you how historically significant Shaft is. At UNC Charlotte, you're a history major. You have to take 4 20th century decades classes, okay? I took the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 50s. There was a 90s one I did not take.
Why not? You want to hear about
It was hard to get into
all the
that
answers.
class, and I knew all the answers, yeah. The 80s was my favorite. Oh, my God. The lady that taught the 70s was just a complete, just stereotypical former burnout. I mean, she was great. I can't remember her name. We had to...
She was iconic.
She was. She's one of the most memorable teachers, even though I don't remember her name. And she cussed like a sailor every class. What a difference between college professorships and high school teachers. We had to watch Shaft. We watched it in class, and we had to write a paper about, like you said, the black... What'd you have?
Blaxploitation
films.
genre.
Yeah, so...
is the name of the genre.
Exactly. So... I can definitely see if it's covered in a history class at the university level, it should be considered for the list.
I have a Shaft poster in my hobby room.
I'm sure you do.
But I think Shaft's going to get the Shaft on this list.
So you're going to lock him in.
I'm going to lock Shaft in.
Hold on, before we make any locks, let's go back through
I
the
just
list.
wanted to lock this in so we can get rid of Saturday Night Fever.
We have 15 on the list by my count. We have...
How many? 18?
15.
Oh, phew.
Bruce
Good, 18 be too many.
Bruce
If we
the
have one more,
Shark.
we can do like the round robin, 16, 8 and 8, 4.
All right, Cookie, shut up. We have Bruce the Shark, Bickle from Taxi Driver.
Brad calls Andrew Cookie sometimes.
Hey.
Marlon Brando is the Don. Gene Wilder is Willy Wonka. Michael Myers, Carrie, Sissy Spacek. Charlotte from Charlotte's Web. Rocky, Superman. Reagan from The Exorcist. Eastwood is Dirty Harry. Roger Moore, James Bond. Belushi in Animal House. Shaft and Travolta in 2 films, but we're going to say Grease along with Olivia Newton-John probably.
Right.
Is where he's going to make the list. Let's talk about, before we lock anybody in, let's talk about who we can cut immediately from
How
this
many
list.
can we have on the list?
8. So,
How about Belushi?
all right, Jaws is making the list.
Okay.
Taxi Driver is debatable whether it makes the list.
I will motion for Taxi Driver to be cut.
Okay.
Cut? Okay, yeah.
I'll second that motion. Yeah, on this list,
it's a list of 8.
Yeah.
It's a tough list.
Gene Wilder's probably making this list.
He's making that list.
Vader is. Myers is, I think. Carrie. Can we cut Carrie?
Let's not cut Carrie yet.
Yeah, Carrie's pretty iconic, man.
I'm going to keep Carrie on there for now.
I'm going to cut Charlotte from
I
Charlotte.
will let you cut Charlotte.
We're not cutting Rocky. We're not cutting Superman. We're not cutting Linda Blair. I think Eastwood's... I don't think he's making 2 lists in a row here.
We're going to cut Dirty Harry?
Yeah, we're going to cut Dirty Harry.
I'll allow it.
I don't think that Roger Moore makes the list 2 bombs in a row. But, I mean, I'm not going to cut him yet.
Roger Moore... I don't know how that Roger Moore defines the 70s era as much.
Yeah.
As Connery
Sure, but it's
in
like
the 60s.
we're doing iconic characters.
Are you arguing on more?
Okay.
Yeah. We're doing iconic characters
I could
that
argue
happen
for both
to be
ways.
from that decade.
I could say keep Roger Moore on there then.
I think Belushi goes.
I hate to say those words, but maybe compared to these characters.
Yeah.
You're hell-bent on Shaft, so he's staying on there. Travolta, I think, cancels each other out. I think Travolta goes.
Wait,
Andy Sandy combo.
All
man.
Travoltas go?
I don't see how he can't. Like he's
There's
so
no
iconic.
way you're taking Tony Manero off this list.
Okay.
What?
Which
You
is
know,
Saturday Night Fever.
Really? You think Saturday Night Fever goes off this list?
compared to some of these other ones, and even compared to Grease itself, yeah.
We have 13 right now.
All right, so we can get rid of 5.
Okay.
Who do you want to lock in,
All
Jerry?
All right.
Let's just talk about who are definites before we lock.
All
Jaws
right.
is
Bucky the Shark.
Jaws is a definite.
The shark does not go anywhere.
Yeah.
The Don is a definite.
Don Corleone has to stay on
Never
the
heard of
list.
him. I'm just kidding.
Gene Wilder is a definite.
Yeah, Willy Wonka.
Vader's probably the most definitive character.
Vader probably.
He's the number one seed.
If you were asking me who was going to win this competition overall,
Vader,
my money would be on him.
My money's on
Vader and Jaws should be like 1 and 2.
Okay.
That's kind of how I feel.
I agree. We can get to the ranking later.
Rocky's got to stay on this list.
Yeah. Carrie could possibly be cut.
Maybe Carrie.
I think Superman has to stay on the list.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'm going to cut Carrie in favor of Reagan because I don't think you have both, and I really want Reagan on the list. And we got to cut here. Oh, man, this is tough.
We each get 3 lock-ins?
We get
one lock.
Oh, we get 1 lock.
So now we're trimming who we can.
We have to agree on 5, and then we each get a lock. Or we could agree on 8.
I want to cut Roger Moore bomb, but Andrew, I think that as much as you love him, you're willing to cut him. I'm willing
to cut Roger Moore.
So Andrew, do you want to use your lock on him?
How many are left?
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
I want a possible lock if we can kind of keep him on the fringe.
Okay,
there.
if I said I would cut Travolta
for Saturday Night Fever,
and not have to cut
Roger
Roger
Moore.
Moore.
You didn't count him. Did you count him twice? Travolta?
No,
so that's
I
12
once. So that's 12, yeah. But we're only going to put him on this list once. Travolta.
I mean, if both of these characters were that iconic, I don't think so. But I'm just saying, if they both were that iconic, then I'm.
Looking back over the list, I would cut.
Saturday Night Fever.
Saturday Night Fever.
All right.
I would rather have Roger Moore on this list than I would either of those Travolta characters.
Okay. Really, more than Grease.
More than Grease. Yeah, more than Grease.
No, I don't know.
Cut it.
I'm changing my mind there. I won't. Okay, but we're thinking about the duo of Travolta and Olivia Newton-John.
Cut them.
I say that beats Roger Moore.
No way.
I do.
I'm not so sure if the movie itself is it.
But we're not talking about the movie.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
We're talking about James Bond. We're talking about James Bond.
Okay.
The James Bond.
So
now you're Sean Connery.
Okay. James.
Now
we're getting a little too far here. Let's get
your move.
Walk it back a little bit.
Okay, guys. So do both of y'all favor Moore over Travolta and Grease?
Yes.
And Olivia Newton-John?
Yes. Danny Zuko, yes.
Oh. I guess maybe. I think his character is more iconic than that. Like, compared to their movie, maybe not. You know what I mean? I think their movie and the songs and everything are maybe more iconic than the two characters.
Is Bond going to end up making this list in every decade?
Sure. Probably. Not in the 80s. Not in the 80s.
Not in the 90s.
Bond is not
Timothy Dalton?
I like Timothy Dalton, but he is not going to make the list in the 80s.
Yeah.
I'm going to lock him in right now.
Pierce Brosnan, maybe not.
Daniel Craig, maybe. Okay,
he's
so
not going to make the 80s.
Y'all want to cut
He's not going to
Travolta.
make the early 2000s.
I guess Danny and Sandy are going the way of musicals.
I'm going to say I
Make him
don't
come
want
back.
to delete him. Jerry, I'm not going to put a Shaft on there. I don't think you would.
What you got? What you got? Read me what you got.
Okay.
Take Travolta off.
I'm not yet. I can't do it yet.
Man. Okay.
Jaws.
That's fine with me. Jaws and Vader.
Jaws, Don, Gene Wilder, Vader, Myers, Rocky. I think all those are confirmed for the list. From
How many is that?
That's 6. So
Hold on, go back up. I
okay.
guess.
Okay.
Wish
Jaws,
we had like a video screen.
Yeah.
Show you what we're looking at.
as well. Jaws.
Yep.
Don.
Yep.
Wilder as
Willy Wonka.
Vader. Michael Myers. Rocky.
That's 6.
How do all those not make this list? I know that we get 3 locks.
I don't know.
I'm just saying
I don't know.
the math is not in our favor.
That's 6. What we got left?
Linda Blair, Exorcist, Roger Moore, Bond, Shaft, and Travolta. I don't know whether I want to use my
Shaft and Travolta in that company can maybe pass.
Okay. This makes our list a lot easier. That made things so much easier. So I think we're down to 9. Is that right? We're down to 9?
Yeah, Jaws, Don Corleone, Willy Wonka, Darth Vader, Michael Myers, Rocky, Superman, Linda Blair, and Roger Moore down to 9.
Okay.
It's James Bond. Roger Moore.
James Bond.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so we got to cut one here. So one of the three we're gonna cut is either gonna be Superman, Reagan, or Roger Moore. We're gonna cut one. We're gonna have to cut one of these three.
I like Roger Moore over both of them. To be honest.
What?
I like Roger Moore over either one of them.
But you haven't seen The Exorcist or Superman, so how can you make that call?
I haven't seen.
I'm not trying to be. I'm not trying to be.
Just for the record, I haven't seen any Roger Moore James Bond film either.
You haven't?
I haven't seen.
Then why are you arguing for him on the list?
It's iconic list because he's iconic. I think
so when
James
you
Bond,
think of Bond, you think of Roger Moore, okay.
Right? Yes, Roger.
I'm not trying to be a Dick Donner.
Oh my god.
No, I didn't mean that as to be facetious. I was just
That was pretty.
No, I mean,
I was trying to argue my.
We be facetious. It's all shout to my high school friends.
I mean,
I'm not trying to say that those two aren't iconic. I'm just saying that he is, in my mind, more iconic than those two. I'm
gonna cut out.
I would cut off. I would cut off either Superman or
Reagan.
I would say Superman or Gene Wilder, which you guys think is crazy.
I think that's very crazy. Gene Wilder.
No way that Gene Wilder gets cut in favor of Roger Moore, James Bond. No way.
I'm thinking Superman gets cut.
I'm more in favor of that Superman getting cut over.
Okay, so I can lock in one.
Because Superman can come back in the '80s because he's got 3 more movies.
If we take out Superman,
but this is the definitive superhero origin film.
Okay, Superman, I like Superman 2 better. I think Superman 2 is better.
I do too. No, I do too.
Okay,
I like Superman 2 better, especially the Richard Donner cut of that movie a lot better. So, there's no way he's think of the '80s. We're not going to get into it here, obviously, but he's not making the finals in the '80s.
Hey, Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. He just might.
Well, 2 of the.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Quest for a better film.
I just don't. I want to knock Roger Moore off. I know we can't.
That's in poor taste right now.
Yeah, it is.
Brad's working for Blofeld.
I have a license to kill.
Oh god. I want to. I'm fine with knocking off Superman. That'll put us at 8.
2 of us are in favor of knocking off Superman. Are you going to use your
lock Superman in?
You going to lock him in?
And then you're going to cut Reagan?
I'm going to cut Jaws.
I'm not cutting Reagan.
I'm just kidding.
I am not cutting Reagan. I think she is tippy top.
You're not cutting any of the... Okay,
I think Reagan is one of the top of the horror items.
So we have to compromise here.
I refuse.
Okay, so unlike Washington, D.C., you say you're willing to take Gene Wilder off. If you are going to use a lock on Roger Moore, I would be willing to take. Are you locking Roger Moore?
I don't plan on using my lock on Roger Moore right this second.
You are?
I don't plan on it.
He says he doesn't plan on
So
using
who are you
his
locking in then?
I mean, if we can all agree on 8, I'm locking anybody.
That's true.
I will, if we agree on 8, I will use an honorable lock on Michael Myers just because I really like the character.
So, okay, I'm going to throw something out there.
Oh,
you ready for this?
You ready to throw
This is fun. This is why we did
You ready for this?
This is called Filibuster the Podcast.
I think there's no Rocky film that's more iconic than Rocky 4.
I agree. But this is the best one. It's the first
I'm
one.
not saying the best. I'm saying the iconic.
It's critically acclaimed.
Now we're
Adrian!
Yeah, we're getting into insanity levels here.
Okay.
What are you talking
How does that
about?
line
What are you talking about? No montage, punching things, running up the
steps
stairs
for the first time?
Oh my goodness. We'll pretend like you didn't say that. Cut that. Edit that out.
No.
Isn't that like some of Brad's earlier rated movies?
This podcast is supposed to be 4 hours, but we edited out Brad's mistakes.
So you have, according to you, you have to have Roger Moore on this list. Do you have to have Roger Moore on this list?
Yes.
Okay.
Ooh.
I don't want him on this list. I do not.
What do you have against Roger Moore?
There's no way he's
Say
more
his name
iconic
again.
than Christopher Reeve, Superman, or Linda Blair.
He turned the planet back in time. Doesn't make any sense.
If he could turn back time. Maybe. No, it does make sense in the context of the film.
I don't care.
It does,
joking.
yeah.
I find that hard to believe, but okay.
Okay,
It's a comic book.
I'm locking in Superman.
Ooh! Oh, it's getting intense.
Nuclear option. All right.
So that's my lock.
It's like base camp and Mount Everest. It's intense.
So now y'all have to decide if y'all want to lock.
So
in
long,
Roger
Gene
Moore
Wilder.
Bond.
No way. We're not getting rid of Gene Wilder.
Okay, so I made my lock. It's confirmed. So let's each of you confirm a lock, then we can cut.
Well, I want to know who people want to cut for a lock. So
I know. I want locking Roger Moore, then all of a sudden Michael Myers is out.
All these are great though.
Yeah.
So or epic. I mean,
I'm gonna put. I'm gonna move that we take out.
Don't say something stupid.
Oh
Don't say something stupid, Jerry. You were something stupid was on your list.
no, Adrian. Then he shut up real quick.
I was gonna move.
Is Vader really that big of a character?
I'm gonna move. Take it out. Michael Myers.
Michael Myers? You just want me to lock you. You love Michael Myers. You're a liar, Jerry.
How does Michael Myers get cut in favor of Roger Moore?
For real, Jerry.
God, I'm not getting pissed off, but I'm getting agitated here.
Michael Myers?
And you're the two biggest Halloween fans in the
Hey,
world.
I didn't say anything about Michael Myers. Don't throw me with this bunch.
I know. If Roger Moore has to be on this list, I'm willing to cut Gene Wilder.
No.
Yeah, I second that.
Okay, I'm gonna lock Gene Wilder in.
Okay.
Come on.
So you have a lock then. So you can't cut
Gene
him.
Wilder as Willy Wonka is getting locked in. You are not cutting out.
Okay, I'm gonna say something crazy since Jerry's throwing crazy stuff.
Okay, wait a minute. No, hold on. Not too crazy. I use one.
All right.
Since the De Niro, we have two.
Whoa. We're going backwards now? We're adding people?
No, we're not.
All right, Brace is back on the table.
Listen to my argument. It's not a sound argument, but it's an argument.
Okay, that's
Since there's two iconic portrayals by two different actors of the Don. You've used your lock, Jerry, so. But if two of the three has to make the list, he has to make the list.
Does Don Corleone cancel himself out? What is this cancel out thing you got going on?
No. Vito Corleone, there's it doesn't matter that De Niro played him as a young man. That'd be like saying, well, because Hayden Christensen played young Anakin Skywalker and somebody different played him in the costume in Rogue One and we're getting later. No.
Hypothetical situation.
Nathan. That's what I'm saying.
Brad,
oh my God, guys.
Brad.
Guys, we have not discussed Ripley.
Oh my God.
Alien.
Alright.
You skipped that on the list. I meant to come back to it.
Rewind back in time like Christopher Reeve's Superman.
We just add another half hour to this
All right,
podcast.
Let's discuss Alien for a second.
We gotta discuss Ripley versus
the
Xenomorph.
Okay,
too.
all right, let's discuss
Lord.
this. Okay, so 1979 Alien, Ridley C. Scott.
Ridley C. Scott.
John C. Reilly.
Sorry, Ridley Scott. Guys, this has been a emotionally tolling episode.
I can't wait to review The Mummy.
Same here. So this, along with Jaws, established suspense in film.
Yes.
The Xenomorph's also iconic.
Yeah.
Through multiple films. But again, the Xenomorph comes up in multiple films.
Yeah.
So, and you got to also think of the Alien Queen maybe as a character you put in the 1980s.
I'm going to tell you.
I suppose this is not maybe the Xenomorph's most iconic role.
Now, and
very iconic.
Since we're discussing Ripley now, I'm going to allow anybody to change their lock if necessary. So you can go back.
Meaning
on your
yourself,
lock.
you mean?
So one,
Ripley
was a name I considered for my daughter, so I definitely think Ripley is an incredible character. I will say though, when I think of Ripley, although I actually prefer Alien over Aliens. I know people are kind of mixed, but when
I think it's a better film.
It is a better film, but when I think of Ripley, a lot of time I think of Aliens.
You think of the power loader and all that stuff.
Think of the power loader. I think of her running in there with Newt and taping the gun and the flamethrower. That's the movie I think of.
Oh my God! So we're just gonna have to have this whole discussion again on the 80s.
So we're gonna kick the can down the road with Ripley.
I know. Pass the buck on to future podcast generations.
She's the first strong female lead
I
in
agree.
a blockbuster film
Since that one film, you know the one.
Okay, so let's talk about the Xenomorph.
For the record, I also like Alien more than Aliens, but continue.
I do too. We're unanimous
James
on
Cameron,
that.
buddy.
That's a good movie, though.
Okay,
we're not talking about the movies, I know.
Xenomorph.
Wait till we get to Terminator.
That
spans the 80s and the 90s.
Let's reel this back
into the now.
Yeah, unfortunately. Xenomorph here.
I'm okay.
Are you, if you're talking about putting Ripley later on down the road, do we consider the Xenomorph for this list?
We do.
Out of everybody else on here.
I don't know.
Oh my gosh. So I'm going to go ahead and put Xenomorph on here. We're adding to the list.
No, I think Ripley should be on here too.
Yeah, I
Okay.
agree. Yes.
Okay.
Who else have we missed?
Nobody else.
Oh, Star Wars.
Alright, so...
Why is Princess Leia not on this
Where's
list?
Luke?
Where's Luke Skywalker?
That Xenomorph...
Luke Skywalker is missing.
Xenomorph kind of like...
Do you see Luke Skywalker?
The shark in Jaws. Kind of like Linda Blair in The Exorcist as Reagan has frightened generations of kids and teens, for that matter. And adults, for God's sakes. That Xenomorph is freaking creepy.
I know how we take care of this problem.
Oh, Lord. I was ready to concede stuff. And...
We take out non-human creatures.
We take out creatures?
We're taking out Jaws.
Jaws?
And I'm changing my lock then.
To the crew?
No. I'm
Okay.
changing my lock to the shark if you're talking about taking creatures off.
I think he's taking them off altogether.
I just meant
Like,
not having
Not
them.
even include them as characters. What he's saying.
Because once we get into the 90s, T-Rex from Jurassic Park, Jar Jar Binks, where does it end? Where does it end?
Jar Jar Binks is a character.
But I do think that Ripley...
I mean, he's not going to make the list, but...
I just want to make it
Sigourney Weaver... We need to reel this conversation in. I think Sigourney Weaver as Ripley should make the list before the Xenomorph.
Yeah, I agree.
So reel this conversation in. It's just a
So we're two in agreement here. So I'm going to take the Xenomorph off.
So Ripley is just on there. Ellen Ripley is on there.
Okay.
Right now.
I'm fine with this.
But that puts us...
I think Xenomorph becomes more iconic through the 80s.
This puts us at what?
We're at 10. We're at 10.
So we
Ripley,
gotta get rid of
Roger
2.
Moore, Linda Blair, Christopher Reeve, Rocky, Stallone, Michael Myers, Vader, Gene Wilder, Marlon Brando, Shark from Jaws. You blocked in Gene Wilder. I blocked in Christopher Reeve. I said you could change with the Ripley Revolution.
Real talk, how iconic is Darth Vader? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Oh my God. He's the number 1 seed.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I don't know if is anybody, are y'all trying to take Jaws off the list?
No, absolutely not. Dude, this guy is just crazy, man.
I'm just pitching out there, if we say that we have a character that doesn't have a human behind it,
yeah,
are we wanting to change the parameters?
I'm changing my lock if you...
He wants to take creatures off the list, like not eligible.
No, I don't want to do that.
He makes a good point about T-Rex from Jurassic Park and such.
The Velociraptor.
But I think there'll be characters.
Godzilla in '98.
But Godzilla, I'm fine. Not '98 Godzilla. But Godzilla's a character I'd be totally fine with, or King Kong, or what have you. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
All right.
Okay. So we gotta make some tough decisions.
The Bone Monkey from 2001. Did y'all have the Bone Monkey on the list?
Oh God, eyes rolled.
Hal was. I had to lock in
back
Hal.
of
I
my
think
head.
to keep him on the list.
Yeah, you locked in Hal.
Yeah.
All right, that was a different podcast. Listen to it if you want to.
Feel free not to.
So what are we gonna do here, guys?
I think we should just give up and just delete this podcast.
So if 2 out of 3 want to make a cut.
Oh no! I don't like this.
Can we have 10 people? Can we have 10?
No.
People?
No,
You gotta have 8.
If we're gonna have 10, we might as well have 12. And then we're there.
So we
add 2 people.
So we can't take Roger Moore off. I really want to take. I think that would solve a lot of problems
For you, maybe.
Okay, I will.
Oh Lord!
In the face of competition, I will concede to take Roger Moore off this list.
Especially
don't just erase him. I can lock him in. All right, you keep him on the fringe.
Do you want to lock him?
We'll see. Let's see what.
If you don't want to lock him now,
I'm pretty sure somebody at one point said something about Michael Myers. So I gotta save my lock for you. And
I will concede Michael Myers and Roger Moore.
You're a liar. You just want me to lock in Michael Myers.
I'll concede Willy Wonka.
I've locked him already.
Oh, so
yeah, that's
locking
right.
him?
Never mind. Sorry,
Right,
my
good,
bad.
good. So that's your lock is staying.
I was willing to concede to Don.
Don Corleone.
No, I'm kidding. No, he
Good
had.
Lord.
Do we consider? See, I would say you do consider Stallone in the 80s, but not over Roger Moore, James Bond. Roger Moore, James Bond doesn't outweigh Rocky.
No.
So I'm not cutting, unless you lock Roger Moore, I'm not cutting Rocky to put Roger Moore on this list.
James Bond.
I'm not cutting Rocky to
James
put...
Bond,
No,
I'm
who's
sorry.
talking about cutting Rocky? Who's talking about cutting Rocky?
Okay, so to keep Roger Moore on this list...
Who do you want to keep on this stupid list?
Well, hold on. Wait a second.
Ripley's still on the list.
You already went with James Bond. You already picked James Bond.
No, we hadn't picked him. He's
In the
not
60s.
been locked
Oh, the
in.
60s.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So he would be on there again.
Yeah, I know. So
Would you?
I don't want him on there.
He doesn't want him on there. I just think this is the iconic
I'm saying though, but if you already have the character, we're talking about characters, and James Bond's already on there.
Yeah.
Then,
to me, this is.
Then he's already won. He's already on the main list anyway.
Yeah, he's already in the finals. So we're gonna have Bond.
So like, what if
60s Bond, 70s Bond, 80s Bond, 90s Bond?
So what if we said here that Ripley won? I'm just throwing this out hypothetically. Hear it out. If Ripley was on this list,
okay,
and then we said, oh, but Aliens. I mean, Ripley's such a huge '80s icon. Okay, here's the other one.
Yeah,
this one is likely to happen.
Okay.
'80s.
Yeah.
The Terminator.
Never heard of him. I was kidding. Sorry.
The Terminator would be on the list, right?
Right.
Terminator 2 '90s.
Yeah.
What is a more early '90s phenomenon than Terminator 2?
Nothing.
So if he if he wins '80s, not eligible for '90s.
What you'd have the Terminator.
The only problem I see.
The Terminator versus the Terminator.
The only problem I see.
That's the whole point.
And especially like Ripley versus Ripley, Terminator versus Terminator.
I know it's a different.
Same actors, actress. It's a different James Bond.
But is it the same character?
And it is the same character.
Is that what we have?
But we specified in the poll. It is specified Sean Connery's James Bond.
It is.
So.
Okay,
that's the only difference I see.
Are we in agreement? We want to take Roger Moore off because if we are, you have to lock him in.
Reluctantly, because I'm a big Live and Let Die.
We can cut him.
Live and Let Die is one of my favorites.
We can cut him.
Okay.
I think in the face of some of these other characters, you guys are hanging Rocky and Michael freaking Myers over my head. You hold these characters hostage.
So we're to 9. We just gotta cut one, guys.
All right, I'm locking in Roger Moore. I was kidding.
Oh, God. Okay, I've locked in Superman. You've locked in...
Oh, Superman! Over Ripley?
Alright, so we're not cutting Jaws. We're not cutting Vader. We're not cutting Michael Myers.
You better not.
We're not cutting Rocky.
Okay.
So I think it's coming down to, are we going to cut Linda Blair or Ripley? Linda Blair is Reagan.
I can't see how you can cut that role.
And we can
character.
So we're gonna cut Ripley.
I can't see how you can cut that character.
Well, you had to lock in Willy Wonka, didn't you? All right, Johnny Depp did it better.
Okay,
I'm kidding. Oh
God!
I don't think I saw that.
All right, guys, we have to make this call. We have to cut one from this list.
Jaws.
Who are you using your lock on?
I'm gonna change my lock then.
Who
you can't change your lock.
Yes, you're locking in Superman.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, what a wasteful lock.
I'm willing to...
I'm starting my own list.
Dean Cain was so much better.
I'm willing to concede Ripley.
Really?
Because I think she can come back again in the power loader in the 80s.
Okay.
That's the only reason.
Okay, I will concede to that then.
Yeah.
If it gets us to 8.
And one of us will lock her in the 80s. She's going to be in one of these
She's going to be there.
Okay, so we're going to cut Ripley.
I'm locking in Michael Myers.
So you're locking Michael Myers.
Just to lock somebody in. And
okay.
I agree with this idea. Even though we're kicking the can. Okay. This is going to come back.
So we have our list.
That's future Andrew's problem.
Shark from Jaws, Marlon Brando as the Don, Gene Wilder, Willy Wonka, Darth Vader, Michael Myers, Rocky, Superman, Linda Blair. Let's make sure that's 8. Yeah.
Okay. Are we fine with seeding this off the podcast? Like over dinner
all right,
or something?
This will be easy here. Jaws will be a number 1 seed. Vader will be a 1 seed.
Okay. It's like 1 and 1. Yeah.
Okay, 1 and 1. So, all right. Okay, so I think Rocky should be a 2 seed. And I think Michael Myers should be a 2 seed. Or no, I think the Don should be a 2 seed. Because we were all kind of unanimous on that.
Makes sense.
I agree with that.
I also think
Myers can be a 3.
Superman's going to be a 4 because I locked him. Because he may not have made this list otherwise. So we're going to do Myers as a 3.
I think Gene should do 4 as well.
Because he was a lock. And then we're going to put Linda Blair as a 3. Yeah, that was not that hard.
Okay.
Reagan, sorry.
Character, not actress.
So in one bracket, you'll have the Shark from Jaws. You'll have Marlon Brando as the Don. You'll have Michael Myers. You'll have we can mix it up. Gene Wilder. But so we have our number 1 seeds.
Okay.
The Shark and Vader are number 2 seeds. The Don and Rocky are number 3 seeds. Are Linda Blair and Michael Myers pretty good? 2 horror people there.
I'm locking in Ponda Baba.
And number 4 is Superman and Gene Wilder.
Oh wait, we forgot to come back to the Oompa Loompas.
No, come on, guys.
All right.
Victor and Dan and the Modal Gnomes.
Let's go on to our review.
Get down! Go, go, go! Oh no, we're gonna die!
What the hell?
Whatever's in there has been safely hidden for 2,000 years. This isn't a tomb. It's a prison. Nick! The hieroglyph said she was named Amenet, chosen to be Egypt's next queen. But her thirst for power led her down a darker path, one that had to be stopped.
Because of your actions, this ancient power has returned. You are alive because you were chosen.
Chosen? By what?
Evil. The ultimate evil.
Legend has it she's a being of unimaginable powers. Now she's using you to regain them.
Oh my God.
She will not stop until she has remade our world into her own.
Just stay with me.
I'm scared.
I'm gonna figure this out.
Don't leave me.
You can't run. You can't escape. She's got plans for you.
That was from the trailer of The Mummy, starring Tom Cruise, directed by Alex Kurtzman, who is most famously known for being part of the Orsi and Kurtzman writing duo. This is his directorial debut. That writing duo brought us such greats as Star Trek and a very good dichotomy here, Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen. Since this is following up our Icons of Cinema 1970's Showdown, we're going to say spoilers from the get-go for The Mummy here. This is a movie
Sand got everywhere.
Yeah. This is a movie we were anticipating. At least I had it on my top 10.
It made my short list. It would probably have been on my honorable mentions. The trailer made it look exciting.
I didn't make a list, but it was on my radar.
And Amos put it on his top 10 when we did that podcast as well. Okay. So definitely worth mentioning that. It's the launch of the Dark Universe, which is supposed to be a revamp of the Universal monsters, for a new generation.
Yeah. After watching the film, it's definitely part of the darkest timeline.
To quote, you've been watching so much Community.
I have. I'm like a Community.
This movie is, as far as critical reception, guys, it dropped from 25 to 20 to 18%.
Wow.
On Rotten Tomatoes. So it's dropped pretty tremendously. I just want to say something from the get-go about this film. The visuals are incredible. It looked to me, at least in the first 2 acts,
yeah,
I think that it looks more. It's only a budget of a 17% now on RT. It looks like a $200 million movie. The budget of this, according to IMDb and Wikipedia, was only $125 million. I don't think that includes marketing.
Typically not.
I liked the effects. I felt that the cinematography was very
boring.
Yeah, just not
Kurtzman.
not atmospheric. And if you go back and watch any of the Universal movies, atmosphere. Atmosphere is huge. Any of those films have a tremendous atmosphere, and this movie just did not have atmosphere to it.
Just a quick note, back to the average rating on Rotten Tomatoes has actually gone up, though, from a 4 to a 4.3 as the tomato meter's gone down. I just thought that was interesting, but...
Let's talk about where this film succeeds. It's the first act.
Yeah.
There's a action set piece involving Cruise and Jake Johnson. They're basically grave robbers in a way. I don't even think
soldiers, but they're grave robbers.
They're long range reconnaissance patrol.
Yeah,
but that's really what they call them.
I know.
I'm having to spit my Coke out here because that is what they're called.
Yeah.
But within the context of this film, it makes no effing sense.
But here's the thing, and the guy says it, and regardless of whether it fits things or not, what he says that they're doing is they're tracking around. Basically, they don't call it ISIS, but it's pretty much ISIS.
It's ICO, Islamic Caliphate Organization from House of Cards.
They're following them around, and they. All right,
I'm having so much fun.
All right, we're gonna Brad calm down for a minute.
I'm on like a caffeine rush because I had 3 cups of coffee today, had a Dunkin' Turbo shot, now I'm drinking a Coke. I'm not gonna be able to go to sleep.
Well, people are in any caffeine rush to finish this podcast.
Yeah. So basically,
hold on. If you made it to this point in the podcast, tweet me or email me the name Ripley Wynn, and I will send you a Funko Pop of Wonder Woman. I will go. I don't have it. I will buy a Funko Pop.
Wow.
And I will send lots of tweets.
The first
I'm about to tweet you right now.
No, but the first email, the first tweet I get that says Ripley Wynn.
Ripley Wynn?
Ripley Wynn.
Okay.
I will give you a Funko Pop of Wonder Woman, or it will be some type of Alien Covenant Funko Pop. Okay, I will.
A big drop off there.
All right.
Thank you for listening.
Also, donate $7 now.
Anyways, so what the gist is that they are long range reconnaissance patrol for the army, and they're basically tracking ISIS, and they're going in before ISIS gets to historic monuments and things, taking antiquities, selling them on the black market, and then when those groups come through and destroy those areas, it's all covered.
Now, it definitely seems like they're not supposed to be taking these antiquities.
They're not supposed to be doing
just,
it.
just for the record.
He admits that they're he calls them liberators of the antiquities. Because they're going to be destroyed anyway, or keep them out of the hands.
Which is it is an interesting nuance. He's not just like a grave robber. There is this group destroying these things. Yes, he's getting his own profit out of it. But so it's an interesting nuance. He's not
but there's not a lot of other nuance.
So they discover this tomb.
About the level.
They go down the tomb. Tom Cruise reveals the mummy's coffin. They basically excavate it out of there.
Tom Cruise basically is the cause of that.
And who is the actress that plays the mummy?
Sophia Boutella.
Okay.
Who was in
Kingsman. She was in Star Trek Beyond as the alien, the main alien.
Which, like with the...
she's in something else coming.
Like with the 90s...
That'll be argued for the nows for most iconic characters.
Like with the original Mummy and the 1930s Mummy and then the 1999 reboot, they do tell her story before the movie even begins, that she was a princess who would have become the next ruler, but late in his life, her father had a child, a male.
To me, she's one of the best parts of this film.
She's
I thought her performance was very strong. She's beautiful in just the right way for this part.
Also in.
Now, I want to talk about the other female character because it's such a drop-off. Annabelle Wallace plays Dr. Jenny Hasley in this film, who's an archaeologist, who's... Again, spoilers from the get-go, who is secretly working with Russell Crowe's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, who are, trying to track down some of these monsters that they're going to put in this dark universe. I think her character is piss poor. I think she's objectified. One of the most memorable parts of this movie is how it fails the Bechdel test completely.
Oh, right.
And it's about to pass it because you have...
I leaned over to you. I said, is it passing the test right now? And then...
Because Sophia Boutella's mummy is talking to her when they're at the complex of Dr. Jekyll. And they just bring up Tom Cruise at the tail end of the conversation, and then
Right.
it fails. And I don't know, she's like leaning up to grab something, and they focus in on her stomach. And
Yeah, Michael Bay shot, I called it.
Yeah.
she just made some questionable decisions.
She's also part of a scene, which is one of these scenes that, you know, I talk about. Sometimes movies have scenes where you're watching it and you're like, oh, I'm supposed to be feeling something right now. I'm not.
Is that the end of the film?
No, that was the shock when it's like, oh, she's working for these people, yada yada. And it was like, is that much of a twist? Like, we didn't really know much about her. She's working for somebody. You know what I mean? Like, and they weren't like, it's not like they were Nazis. Like, they seemed like they weren't on Tom Cruise's side, but they didn't seem like.
Well, I mean, they're trying to track down monsters and.
Right, exactly. But I mean,
they weren't.
But like, you know, I don't know. We didn't know enough about them yet.
Sure.
In my eyes, like they seemed sinister to us. I thought more so in a.
We just don't know who they are.
Well, they also pigeonholed a love story, and they resolved the film with a love story between Cruise and Wallace's character that made no sense, was not developed throughout the course of the film in the slightest.
It was developed only by.
She's a man. She's a man. He's a man. She's a woman.
Right, and they had do things together and they save each other.
They had hooked up previously.
And there were a couple times where she's trying to. You have good inside you. Like, he doesn't necessarily think he's a good guy, and she's like, "No, you are a good guy. I see it in you." And he has, and it does come around at the end a little bit.
How they established their kind of relationship, if you want to call it. When they airlift the mummy, I think the best part of this whole movie, I think it's an epic plane crash scene.
Yeah.
When they have some trouble with a revived Jake Johnson, which we can talk about in a minute, is very problematic. And the plane's crashing. I call it the best plane kind of crash scene since Flight in 2012 with Denzel, who doesn't crash that plane. But
spoilers.
Whenever the whole scene with the chute, how it's filmed in zero gravity, I mean, it's very well done.
The only problem to me with that scene is, for the most part, we've seen that scene already. Like, we didn't see the entirety, because the trailer focuses so much on that scene.
It's the
and
best
I saw
scene
it
in
so
the
many
movie.
Right. So it's like that's the only, but it is a really cool scene. So
yeah, I agree. Let's talk about this film within the broader context of this dark universe.
Okay.
Russell Crowe is a tremendous actor. I think this performance is horseshit. I think it's terrible. I think this is arguably one of the worst performances of Russell Crowe's career.
Yeah, for the most part, say what you will about the film, Tom Cruise is still Tom Cruise doing his Tom Cruise thing.
Lots of running.
He runs. He runs a lot in this movie.
Yeah, but Russell Crowe's character,
and you see him run.
Okay, he chews scenery like almost at a laughable rate. I mean, it was awful. I thought his performance as Jekyll and Hyde. It's hard to try to outshine Tom Cruise on a film screen, but he was trying his darndest to do it. What did you think? I want Jerry. You know this character very well. What did you think about this?
About Russell Crowe
as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde?
Well, it was kind of out of nowhere, and I mean, which is okay, you know, him being Dr. Jekyll. I mean, I thought, like, well, that's kind of cool, you know, if they're bringing these characters in, but they didn't really do much with it. I mean,
it seemed. I appreciate what they're doing. Like, they're trying to set up this universe, and I appreciate his role. I think we need this doctor character. Let's do this.
I often, I don't know, I don't find Russell Crowe to be that interesting in a lot of roles anymore. Like, I used to really like Russell Crowe.
I think his last really good role was American Gangster up against Denzel Washington. Was that Scorsese as well? No, that was Michael Mann.
I didn't feel there was enough for him to do in this role to really be able to give it any nuance.
Yeah, I felt
he's a lot of exposition.
Yeah. If this isn't setting up a cinematic universe, is his character even needed for the film?
I think this is a problem with this movie. Is, and I looking at it, you know, kind of doing the big picture.
Ridley Scott directed American Gangster.
The big picture here is: does this movie want to try to be a modern version of The Mummy, of a horror movie that's not, you know, not like crazy, bloody, violent, just a good solid horror movie?
Yeah.
Does it want to be a more,
action adventure
superhero film.
Right.
And I think the
it's neither.
Yeah, it's neither.
Right.
It goes back and forth at a rate that you eventually lose interest in what's going on.
The movie felt tiresome.
The part where they introduced Dr. Jekyll and his group almost felt like Nick Fury and Iron Man 2-ish to me. Where it's like, is this really helping the movie?
It would have been like if Nick Fury showed up in the middle of the first Iron Man and the last hour was about him talking about the Avengers, talking about
and then him turning into Mr. Hyde felt like almost something that felt like they needed to do. Yeah. It's like you didn't need to do that.
That felt like borderline
You could have had
TV
him
movie.
as Dr. Jekyll and him giving himself the shots, which he was doing. He's giving himself shots, and him talking about kind of the nature of he understands what it's like to have evil within.
I understand
with Tom Cruise, but he never needed to turn into Mr. Hyde in this movie.
I understand he was supposed to cause a distraction for our main characters, so this guy can help the mummy escape.
Yeah.
But really, you could have done literally anything else. You could have done it in the middle of the night.
I wholeheartedly agree with Jerry that the problem with this film is it's trying to be too many things and it don't know what it wants to be. Does it want to be a film that sets up a universe? Does it want to be a horror film? Does it want to be a Indiana Jones adventure thriller type movie?
Sometimes.
And again, I think the ¡99 version really knew exactly what it was.
It was good. It was a fun.
It was an action adventure film with horror elements.
Yeah.
But it was lighthearted, lots of one-liners, good action scenes. This movie just didn't have a lot. I liked the
Didn't have heart.
I liked the first.
Didn't have anything.
I liked the first quarter of the movie, maybe.
Yeah.
I liked the idea of introducing this group that's kind of, looking for the monsters and being involved in these things. But the rest of the movie just feels tiresome. And eventually you're just kind of like, I'm waiting for something really intriguing to happen.
It's one of these things that, on paper, everything looks good. What they're doing, who they got doing stuff. But it's altogether, it just didn't work. And it just kind of became boring. It wasn't even necessarily, bad.
It wasn't so bad, it was funny.
Yeah, there were a couple scenes where I could have, whatever.
I wanted this to be a really good... again,
I was expecting,
horror movie mixed with some adventure elements. Because you had the beginning with they're involved in a shootout, and I just felt there was very little atmosphere in this movie.
Does the dark universe work if it's not dark? If it's not a horror movie.
I don't think it has to be horror in the sense of that these are incredibly scary movies.
Yeah,
but I just don't think it knows what it wants to be yet. If the whole movie had the one tone that was more along the lines of something like Hellboy, or I'm not a big fan of the movie, but at least the movie Van Helsing has a consistent tone the whole way through.
Yeah.
This movie does not have a consistent tone.
Also,
the setup at the ending though does leave me a little intrigued for what comes next. So maybe the next one, if it, we'll wait and see. But
here, I'm gonna tell you why it doesn't leave me intrigued. Okay. Who's the most interesting character of this film?
The Mummy.
I agree. Sophia Boutella is the Mummy. Do you agree with that answer? Okay. Think about that.
I guess, yeah, but I don't think anybody was
visually,
that interesting.
I thought she demanded your attention without chewing scenery like Russell Crowe did. So you take the Mummy and you transfer who the Mummy is at the end of the film from her to Tom Cruise. How do you remove the most interesting character of the film from the future? And who knows what could happen, but conceivably from the future of the Dark Universe.
I just slapped my head because I thought of two more characters that we forgot on our 70s list.
Who's that?
John Voight and Dustin Hoffman from Midnight Cowboy.
Oh yeah, no, not even going back there.
Darn it. Okay. Oh well.
Honorable mention.
But do you agree with that? I mean, what would you rather see moving forward? Tom Cruise as the Mummy, and he's just going to be playing Tom Cruise. which is usually great.
Tom Cruise.
Or would you have rather have seen alongside like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or The Invisible Man, or Javier Bardem as Frankenstein? Would you have rather seen this Sophia Boutella mummy? That's who I would
thought she
rather
was
see.
a more interesting character. She has, I mean, they gave a little bit of backstory.
Yeah.
That was good. I mean, it was on par with any of the other mummy backstories that we've ever had.
I don't think anybody was significantly more interesting than anybody else, in my opinion.
But the mummy had potential. She had potential.
Sure, but I think this Tom Cruise could have potential in the future. Maybe in this movie she was a little more interesting, but whatever. I'm not saying I necessarily disagree with you guys. I'm just saying I'm also intrigued by this, as I would have been intrigued if she moved on. It's either way to me. I really don't care either way who they would have gone with there. But obviously you understand money-wise when they went with Tom Cruise.
I did not like the ending of the movie and the whole how
it was just
ending,
weird. Especially the whole point of the movie is people are trying to do this thing. Multiple people throughout this movie are trying to do this thing,
and he does.
And he just like, oh, I'm just going to do it.
But it
now.
works for him.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Exactly. So it's a MacGuffin-driven film. They're trying to get a stone and a dagger, and apparently she's supposed to kill him and make him immortal, I guess. And
she's the god Set is going to inhabit his body, from what I understand.
So instead of her doing that, he leaves her for dead. He kills himself. Then he brings back the Annabelle character. And then he brings back
Jake Johnson.
Annabelle Wallace is her name, plays Jenny Hasley. Then he brings back Jake Johnson, who had previously been the worst part of this movie. There's a scene with Tom Cruise in a bathroom, a women's bathroom, talking to dead Jake Johnson in the mirror.
It's 2017, all right?
It's very, So Jake Johnson gets killed because he gets bit by a spider, and then... Well, in the Mummy's Tomb, he gets bit by a spider.
Not a scarab, unfortunately.
Instead of scarabs, like the 99 version, there's a camel spider bites him. Well, they're not in Egypt. Remember, they're in
Iraq.
And I also wonder if they were camel spiders or if Tom Cruise is like.
I wonder if they misidentified, because he dies next to the mummy. He dies on the plane where they're transporting the sarcophagus. Yeah. But then he comes back and he's being controlled by the mummy and starts stabbing people and killing people.
The more we talk about this movie, I'm thinking about changing my rating to something worse.
I mean, that made sense to me. That
it's all fine so far, I thought.
I mean, that was fine. But
I wasn't. I didn't like the beginning of the movie as much as you guys. This is all fine.
The weird thing that happens is Tom Cruise can see him when he's dead, and he's everywhere.
After he's like dead. That's
what's bad.
After he's dead. Now that was very American Werewolf in London, because that's a huge part of that movie is that the guy can see the people's deaths he's responsible for.
I'm just wondering because she's raising all these dead bodies. But she never raises his once he's shot a couple times in the chest. Like, what kind of zombie is this guy? I mean, he's not a zombie, but it's still
something was going on strange. Like, she was controlling him, but she couldn't raise him.
Yeah. I want to say this. We've kind of crapped on the end of this movie, and rightfully so. However, I did like a lot of the stuff in London as it starts with the sandstorm coming through and the Sophia Boutella mummy getting rid of the mercury and unleashing her fury onto London. I like the city. I'm glad it wasn't like in Washington, D.C. or something. Like, it works when you see Big Ben and a sandstorm.
What else was cool was that she could bring back to life, they showed a bunch of Crusaders' tombs were found at the beginning of the movie. And she was able to control them and bring them back to life too.
Yeah.
I liked parts of it, but it felt like so disconnected at times.
It felt like a first time director,
and it couldn't establish itself tonally.
I agree with that.
And not in a good way where a movie takes multiple genres.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there are plenty of movies that are good that take multiple genres. And
dark comedy or
the
something.
tone can change, and that's enjoyable.
Yeah.
This, I never could feel like what the movie was going for.
All right, so we've ran long. It's been a fun episode for sure. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. Andrew, you got something you want to say?
No, I was going to rate it.
Okay, let's go ahead and rate it then. We'll start with you, Andrew.
I'm going to give it an I just think it was kind of generally just kind of boring and not much going on.
I'd give it an 8.5. I'd probably watch it again if we're on Netflix or something.
Oh god.
No, I can't watch it again if it's on Netflix.
No, that's fine.
I really like the first part of the movie, and again,
I would watch that airplane scene.
There were a lot of larger set piece scenes in the middle of the film I liked, but it just never gel all the way for me.
And that's fair. You talk about watching the airplanes. There's a movie, World War Z, that I watch. Like when it was on Netflix, I used to watch the first 15-20 minutes of that like multiple times. So the beginning's so good. With like
I haven't seen it. I've read the book.
The beginning I thought was like really. The movie itself is fine. It's a little weird. But that beginning is like really cool. Like the first like 20 minutes of that I love. So I can understand watching. You'd have to get to the airplane scene in this though.
I'm like using any excuse I can to pre-order every 4K Blu-ray that's coming out. I'm not pre-ordering this, even though it's up for pre-order in 4K.
I don't think.
I'm going to rate this as I did on the website when I wrote the review, A Hollow Tomb. I'm going to rate this as an F. So we're kind of in agreement. You're A and a half, but we're all with a solid F. So guys, let's go ahead and wrap this up.
Oh yes,
Jerry, where can people find more of you on the internet?
Action Figure Barbecue, BARBECUE.com.
All right, what about you, Andrew Stokes?
You can follow me on Twitter at AKA Andrew Stokes, where I will be retweeting Brad's polls. If you don't want to follow him, I wouldn't. And you can also find a few articles here or there on the Epic Review, TH Epic Review. If anything during E3 catches my interest, I'll be trying to do an article about that for sure. So
very cool. Find me at TH Epic Review. Find me at thegww.com. Of course, at Twitter, you know the spiel. 2 E's. REEL. Brad.
Listen to this cool guy.
Now,
hashtag cool guy.
I'm going to probably release the first poll later tonight for round 1 of the 1970s. You'll have 3 days for each round and then 7 days for the finals.
Wait at least 3 hours after you've released the podcast
so people can hear everything.
Yeah, probably do. I may release the podcast tomorrow and the poll like tomorrow night. We'll see.
Tonight at 10, Brad releases
Stay
his poll.
tuned to my Twitter feed. I'll post the poll on the website as well. I'm trying to get Jerry to post it on actionfigurebarbecue.com. You're going to retweet it, so you'll have great access to the poll. So I'm really excited to see how the results turn out.
To quote Ghostbusters, you got to try this poll.
We put a lot of heart. We put a lot of effort. There was a lot at stake in this podcast with the 1970s. The 80s is going to be insane. I'm going to need some time to recuperate from the 70s.
Can't wait to see Ripley come back up.
I can't wait.
I think there's going to be fisticuffs in the 80s version.
And from the Hollywood foothills of North Carolina, for the 65th condition of the Confirmed Epic Podcast, joke there, edition, we are out.
This has been a production of the GWW Radio Network. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. Also, check out Geeks Worldwide at thegww.com for all the latest news, reviews, and opinions on video games, comics, movies, TV, cosplay, and more. Geeks, assemble!